Okay, good morning. Welcome back to all of you guys. Welcome back. Nice to see all of you guys. Today is our second day of our Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course, and I'm going to be guiding you in meditation to get started. Just like every morning, we'll start with the chanting, move into the guidance for meditation. There's going to be that period of time where it's just quiet and we're just all meditating together, everyone here and anyone who's joining us online. And then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And then I'm going to start our talk for today, which is the Eightfold Path, the path for all humans to enlightenment. This is the teaching that you would need to know inside and out, backwards and forwards, left, right, up, down, in order to make your way to enlightenment. And oftentimes students revisit this more than one time because that's what you're going to need to do in order to be able to get to enlightenment. But we're going to start off today with introducing you to this and going into a lot of depth in a way that you can independently verify the teachings of the Buddha using his original words. Then, of course, we'll take a mid-morning break and finish up that talk before lunch. We'll take our nice long lunch break, and then we'll come back and I'm going to be teaching you guys about meditation, because by that point you will have already been able to practice 3 times. So if you'd like to join for meditation, you can chant along if you'd like, and then I'm going to come back in with the guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakava Bhutang Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti pisu Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanam Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up to the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Once the breath is well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti Piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rogavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, good morning once again. Sawadee-ka. Nice to see all of you guys this morning. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to everyone joining us online as well. Today we're going to be learning the Eightfold Path, the path for all humans to enlightenment. And keep in mind what I shared yesterday when we were talking about the teachings of the Buddha, that there's nothing in these teachings to believe. As I'm walking you through the Eightfold Path today, it's important to listen with eager ears so that you're actively learning the teachings. This is what the Buddha teaches you, is to listen to his teachings with eager ears, that you're actively listening so that you can learn them, you can investigate it and examine his teachings, and then you can reflect on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false, and then you can practice his teachings, and that's where the real results are coming in. So there's no belief in these teachings whatsoever. He's going to guide you on how to actually train your mind to be able to get to this enlightened mental state. This Eightfold Path, it's a core central teaching that you would need to know in order to make your way to enlightenment. There's 8 individual factors. It starts with right view, moving to right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. I'm going to walk you through each one of these using the words of the Buddha, and then helping you to be able to see how you can learn it, how you can reflect on it to verify it, and how you can practice it. And this way you can integrate it into your day-to-day life. The way that you might think about this Eightfold Path is it's kind of like 8 dials. If you had a speaker system and you were trying to get a better and better quality sound out of these speakers, you would kind of tweak these 8 dials and try to get the better and better quality sound out of the speakers. Well, this is the same thing with your mind, that you can tweak these 8 individual dials and you can get a better and better performing mind. As I mentioned to you guys yesterday when we talked about what is enlightenment, you'll see the elimination of discontent feelings, but gradually over time, they'll start to diminish over time. You'll notice that focus and concentration, the clarity, the deep memory. You'll notice your personal, professional relationships are blossoming. You'll notice you'll get to the point where you're not even in a bad mood anymore. You'll be able to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to everyone around you. And it comes through training in this Eightfold Path. It's organized into these 3 sections of wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. And it starts off with right view. That's where we're going to spend a lot of time in the morning, is helping you to get established in right view. This is where you can have a real breakthrough to understanding what's causing these feelings. The anger, the sadness, the frustration. We oftentimes think it's other people or some other situation, something external. We think that that's what's causing the anger and the sadness and the frustration. But you're going to be able to see in a way that you can independently verify that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And the beauty in this is that because your mind is causing these feelings, this is why you can actually eliminate them. You don't have to go out into the world and train 8 billion people to do things your way. You can actually just train your own mind to be able to get to this peace and this joy. So as we go, just like always, feel free to ask any and all questions. Those of you here at the temple, if you guys could use the microphones like you did yesterday, and those of you online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like by just unmuting your microphone. So here's right view from the Eightfold Path, using the words of the Buddha. He says, in what, monks, is right view? It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the wisdom of the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view. So what he's doing here is he's pointing to another teaching. The Eightfold Path is a core central teaching that other teachings plug into, and he's got these other teachings that are kind of like on the peripheral that plug into the Eightfold Path. So rather than repeat what's called the Four Noble Truths here, he's actually just pointing to it and saying that is right view. And then underneath of this line here, I've got the top section of the Four Noble Truths. It goes deeper than this, but I just have the top section here so that you can build the connection and the confidence that what he's talking about here with right view in the Eightfold Path is the Four Noble Truths. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths so that you can understand this and you can have this breakthrough to understanding what is the problem in the mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. So as I help you to understand the Four Noble Truths, I need to first help you understand the 3 universal truths. These truths are building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. Without understanding the 3 universal truths, you wouldn't be able to understand the Four Noble Truths. We refer to them as truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true, and other people know that they're true. But in order for you to get the benefit, this is where you need to know that they're true. And that's why you're not believing what I'm going to share with you. Remember, the Buddha is not teaching you the way the world should be, with a bunch of rules and commandments, a bunch of beliefs, and then hoping that something good happens when you die. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And that's what you're going to start seeing here in these truths. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And this is why you can independently verify it, because you live in the world and you can look around the world and you can see what he's describing to you. And now you can cultivate this wisdom to understand the way the world is. And now you can navigate the world more peacefully and more joyfully. So this first one here, this universal truth of impermanence, he's explaining to you that everything in the world around you is constantly changing, that there's this what's called conditioned objects that arise, they change, and then they fade away. So anything that you can see, hear, smell, any flavors that come in contact with the tongue, any physical objects that come in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through your mind, these are all impermanent, meaning they are not permanent. They're constantly changing. They arise, they change, and they fade away. And then there's something called unconditioned objects. Unconditioned objects, they don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. The natural laws of existence are that way. They don't arise, change, or fade away. And this is why what the Buddha described as teachings 2,500 years ago is just as applicable today as it was 2,500 years ago, because he's describing these natural laws, and those natural laws don't change. And enlightenment itself, once you attain enlightenment, it's a permanent mental state. It doesn't arise, it doesn't change, and it doesn't fade away. It's just always on. But everything in the world around you that you can see, hear, smell, taste, that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, these things are all impermanent. Okay, so this is a little bit of the learning. The intellectual part of understanding the universal truth of impermanence. But now you don't believe that. You don't believe it at all. You just heard what I had to say and you're starting to understand it intellectually. But now you move it into reflection. When you're reflecting on something, you look around the world and try to independently verify whether this is true or it's false. And that's how you can independently verify it. And what you would like to do is look at things around the world and see if this is indeed true. Because if you can find something in the world that you can see, hear, smell, taste, that comes in contact with the body or thoughts or ideas that go through the mind that are permanent, then you've disproven this and it's not a universal truth. So I suggest you start with something that you're very familiar with. You can start with this human body. You can ask yourself, is this body permanent or is it impermanent? If this body is permanent, that means it's never changed. It's always the same. If it's impermanent, that means you're experiencing constant change with this physical body. So what would you say? Is this body permanent or is it impermanent? It's impermanent, right? From the time of conception, when the egg and the sperm come together, this body's been constantly changing. We get taller, we get shorter, our hair grows, we cut it, it grows some more. We get pimples and moles and freckles. We get gray hair and wrinkles. We lose our hair. Our teeth grow in, then they fall out, and then they grow in again, and then we get cavities. This is constant change with the physical body. What would you say about your relationships? Are your relationships permanent, meaning all the people in your life have been in your life your entire life? Or are your relationships impermanent, meaning people have been coming and going in and out of your life your whole life? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, right? They're constantly changing. Okay. What about your bank account? Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? It's going up and down and up and down. Some people's goes up, up, up. Some people's goes down, down, down. I'm not sure what category you're in, but that's your bank account. It's constantly changing. What about the weather? Is this permanent or impermanent? I hear impermanent over here. What about you guys? It's impermanent, right? Things are constantly changing. Right? So we could just go on and on and on and on. And if that's what you need to do in order to be able to independently verify that, do that. Go out into the world. Take 3 days, a week, 3 months if you need to. Look around the world and try to find something that you can see that is permanent. And what you're going to come back with is you're going to see everything around you is impermanent. When you're walking down the sidewalk today at lunchtime and you see that crack in the sidewalk, that's impermanence. Some sidewalks here in Thailand, they go up and down, right? They're kind of elevated, right? Some streets have sidewalks, some streets don't, right? You can look around the temple and you can see the wood planks on the floor. They're different lengths, they're different colors, they're different textures, right? There's a certain number of people here in the class that's different than that was here yesterday. There's more people here than yesterday. And tomorrow, there's going to be a different number of people here. This is constant change. Okay, this is really important to understand this because it's a building block to help you understand when we get to the Four Noble Truths, so you can have that breakthrough. Okay, so this is the universal truth of impermanence, explaining to you that things are constantly changing in the world. And if you can't see this truth, you're going to need to go out into the world until you can see that it's true. Then you have wisdom and you know, everything around me is impermanent. It's constantly changing. Okay. Then we've got this second universal truth. It's called the universal truth of discontentedness. Some people refer to this as suffering. If you've been studying the teachings of the Buddha in other places, you might have heard someone refer to this as suffering. I don't use this word, and I'll explain to you why after I explain to you what this universal truth is, and then I'll circle back and explain it to you, why I don't use the word suffering. So in the original source teachings of the Buddha, he uses the word dukkha. This is the Pali language. This word dukkha is translated to discontent, discontented, and discontentedness. Because what the Buddha is describing here in this universal truth is he's explaining the unenlightened mind and what the unenlightened mind experiences. And he says that it experiences 3 feelings: a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, and a feeling that is neither painful nor pleasant. These are conditioned feelings. They arise, they change, and then they fade away. So the pleasant feelings are things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. These are very pleasant for the mind to experience, and they're conditional. It's based on some condition. If it's sunny outside, you might get so happy. If your boss gives you a raise, you might get excited. If your mom's coming to visit you, you might get thrilled or have exhilaration or euphoria or something like this, right? So these are the conditional pleasant feelings. They're based on some condition. Then there's painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. These are very painful for the mind to experience. And once again, it's based on some condition. There's some condition that's causing that feeling to occur. Then there's neither painful nor pleasant feelings. Here I put in here loneliness and boredom, and some people say that's very painful for them, so you could put that in the painful category if you'd like. But shyness is a good example of this, where the mind is shy. It's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's like, it's just kind of neither painful nor pleasant. Or if you were on public transportation and somebody you didn't know came and sat really, really close to you and your body was touching their body, you might say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's like neither painful nor pleasant. It's like uncomfortable. The mind's dissatisfied in that situation, right? So this is the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. This is what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. Conditional pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. So this is what the Buddha is describing as discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. This is what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. That maybe you wake up in the morning, you see it's sunny outside, you get so happy and so excited. But that happiness fades away because when you go to take a shower and you come out and you see it's raining, now you're frustrated or annoyed. Or if your bank account balance is up here, you get really happy and excited. But then when it goes down here, you might get sad or frustrated. These are called conditioned feelings. An enlightened being is beyond this. They don't experience these conditioned feelings. They experience unconditioned mental qualities where before they ever woke up in the morning, they were already joyful. They were already happy. And they saw that it's sunny outside. It's like, sweet, I'm going to go outside and have some fun. We're going to go hiking. I'm going to call my friends. We've been meaning to go on that hiking trail for a while. Now they go take a shower. They come out and it's raining. It's like, okay, well, it's raining. I guess I'm not going hiking. Maybe I'll go to the mall. Maybe I'll stay home and read a book. Maybe I'll invite my friends over for dinner. They're not going to be upset. They're not going to be frustrated because they didn't base their happiness on the sun. So when the sun's gone, because the sun is impermanent, then they can maintain their joy. So you'll understand this when we get to the Four Noble Truths. So an enlightened being, they're not experiencing this up and down and up and down. That's what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. You have periods of peace here and there, but it's only a matter of time before you get frustrated or agitated or annoyed about something because the mind has certain things that you're going to see that is causing these feelings to occur. So here you can independently verify this because the Buddha is describing what the unenlightened mind is, and your mind is unenlightened right now, and you can reflect on this and think about all the feelings that you experienced over the course of your life and ask yourself, does this describe accurately what it is that you experience? Do you experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant? And are those conditioned feelings? Based on some condition, you will then experience this feeling. Because if the feelings that you experience don't fit into these three categories, then it's not a universal truth. So when we get to the question period, if you need help, feel free to ask me questions and I will help you. If you have a feeling that you think doesn't map into one of these three, then I can help you to be able to independently verify it. Okay. Now, some people refer to this as suffering. You might have heard that if you studied the teachings of the Buddha in other places. And for me, the word suffering describes the painful feelings really, really well. If the mind is angry or sad or frustrated or any of those other painful feelings, you might say, yeah, the mind's suffering. Like when you're experiencing guilt and shame and fear, you might say you're suffering. But when you're happy or excited, would you say you were suffering in that situation? Or if that person you don't know came and sat next to you on public transportation and your body was touching their body, would you say you were suffering? Probably not, right? So that word suffering, it describes the painful feelings really well, but it doesn't describe the pleasant feelings or neither painful nor pleasant. So you're only understanding 33% of what the Buddha is teaching if you use the word suffering, and you're missing 66% of his teachings. If you're missing 66% of a teacher's teachings, how could you ever get to the goal that he's describing for you, right? So the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness explains the full spectrum of emotions that you're having in the unenlightened state. Because when you're so happy or excited, have you ever fell down and like tripped or fell and hit your head or something, or busted your elbow because you're so excited or so happy? That's because the mind's discontent. Or if you've ever been so excited that you can't even make a decision about something, this is because the mind's shaken up. It's unstable. It's unsteady. That's what the Buddha is talking about here with this discontentedness. The mind's shaken up. It's unsteady. So discontent, discontented, or discontentedness describes this much better. Whereas if we keep using the word suffering, we're not going to fully understand what the Buddha is talking about here with this particular universal truth. Then we've got the universal truth of non-self. This is a solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. Yesterday, we were talking about the 10 fetters, and I was kind of introducing you to those. Those were the 10 individual pollutions in the mind, and it starts with personal existence view. And this is the solution to personal existence view. What personal existence view is, just as a reminder, or maybe some of you guys weren't here yesterday, personal existence view is where the mind is confused, it lacks wisdom, it has misunderstanding, it has this misperception that this body or this mind is you. So the mind clings to a self-image or a self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. And now when you're being perceived in the world the way you want to be perceived, you'll get pleasant feelings. But when you're not being perceived in the world the way you want to be perceived, then you'll get those painful feelings. So if you've ever had that, food spilled on your clothing in a social situation and you felt embarrassment, that was your personal existence view. That was the mind clinging to this self-image, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And when you spilled this food on your clothing, the mind wasn't being perceived that way. So now it felt embarrassed. Or if you ever were in the mirror and you saw a wrinkle or a mole or a gray hair, or you started losing your hair, you noticed a little extra fat here or there, and you were shaken up by that. This is the mind's personal existence view, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. Or if you put on clothes and looked in the mirror, and then you're like, no, that's not how I want to look today. And then you went and got some other clothes and put those on and checked those out. And then you might have done that several times before you realized that, okay, I'm just going to go out with whatever I'm wearing here, right? So this is the mind's personal existence view, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. Right? This is the clinging to the self-image. But then the mind also clings to the self-identity. There's certain identity in the mind that the mind could cling to. And this is where I gave you examples based on your culture, ethnicity, sexual orientation, your nationality, a job or occupation, right? So if I thought that I am American, right? And then I'm in a restaurant and I hear people saying all Americans are so kind and loving and warm and friendly and polite. I've never heard that before, but that could be something that people do, right? You could be in a restaurant and hear that and you're like, oh, wow, they're talking about me. If you're Mexican or wherever you're from, if they're talking about that particular group of people, if you identify with that is who I am, now you'll get pleasant feelings when you're hearing something positive. But then when people say something negative or degrading or diminishing, now you're going to feel painful feelings because you identify with that as who you are. Or say you have a job or occupation, like say I was a police officer and I identify with I am a police officer. And now when I'm doing that job, I feel great. I feel wonderful. But then maybe 10, 15 years into the job, maybe I get injured and I can't do it anymore. Or maybe I get fired or I get laid off or something like this. Or maybe I retire and I'm not doing this job anymore. And now I don't feel whole. I don't feel like a full person. I feel like less of a person because I identify with I am a police officer. And now I'm doing this job as a food server or a taxi driver or something like this. And now my mind really struggles in that situation. Or if you've ever been in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend and you identified with I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, or I am a husband, I am a wife. And now when you guys broke up, when you were single, your mind didn't identify that way. So you might have thought the way to solve this problem is to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. That might be what the mind was attempting to do, is that when you were single, the mind felt conflicted because the mind identified with I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend. And you thought the way to solve this uncomfortableness is to hurry up and get right back into another relationship so you can assume that identity again. Sometimes people come here to Thailand in search of themselves. They might be in their home country and they say, I don't even know who I am anymore. I need to go find my true self, right? I need to find my true self. I need to go on this journey to find myself. I don't know who I am. So they might come to a place like Thailand to look for themselves, right? And find themselves. But what the Buddha is teaching you with the universal truth of non-self is that you won't find yourself in Thailand because it doesn't exist. There is no self. That's what he's teaching you, that this body nor this mind is you. And if the mind continues to cling to it and want it to be permanent, as soon as you cling to these things, now you're going to be conflicted. You're going to have difficulties. So someone might come to Thailand and they find new hobbies, new friends, new jobs, new activities, or something like this. And they might cling to this and they might go back to their home country and be like, I found myself. All right. I feel good again. It took me a year or two, but now I found myself, right? But now as soon as all that stuff starts to change, they're going to be right back in the same problem where they don't know who they are anymore because all that stuff has changed. Their friends, their hobbies, their activities, their job, they're no longer doing those things. So we can get to the point where we realize non-self, where we realize that there is a body and there is a mind, but this isn't who I am as a person. Right? We don't have to identify with this. We don't have to cling to this as who we are as a person. This self-image and this self-identity, it's not us and who we are as a person. But as long as the mind does cling to it, then you're going to continue to experience discontentedness in these types of situations that I just described. Okay, so now this is a little bit of learning, intellectual learning on the universal truth of non-self, but you need to independently verify it. You need to be able to see the truth for yourself. Now, some people understand this when I first describe it. Some people have a lot of trouble with it because we spend a lot of time accumulating this personal existence view as we've gone through life. We have national anthems, we have flags, we have all different kinds of ways. We have sports teams that we cheer for, which reconfirms this personal existence view. We even get names at birth, right? That kind of like are labels. And now we have this character and this personality around it. So some people understand this intellectually when I start to describe it. Some people don't, and it's okay. Some people take many months to be able to understand this, right? But let me show you how you can independently verify that there is no self. Okay? Think about yourself when you were a child, when you were a teenager, early adulthood, and then now. Think about yourself, your character, your personality. Has it been the same all the way through those phases of your life? Or have you been looking at yourself differently from childhood, teenage years, early adulthood, and now? What would you say? Has it been the same or has it been changing? It's changing, right? It's not permanent, right? Here's another way. If your arm was amputated and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? Say no. A couple people say no, right? So intellectually, you can understand that this body is not you. Because if this body was you, when I asked you that question, you would say, yes, I'm less of a person. Right? But you understand intellectually that this body isn't you. But this is where the confusion and the misunderstanding of the unenlightened mind happens, is that when somebody says something about this body in a negative way or diminishing or degrading way, you get angry, you get frustrated, right? That's the confusion that the mind has, that intellectually it can understand that this body isn't you because I asked you that question and you answered it that way. But in the heat of the moment, when somebody says something about this body, that confusion is there, that pollution of mind, that personal existence view, now the mind's angry or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. Here's a third way that you can independently verify that there is no self. Okay? Sometimes what I say to students is say, point to yourself. Where are you? Can you point? Nobody's pointing. Maybe everyone's realized non-self. Khalid's pointing here, right? This is common. People will typically point here, or they will point here. And they'll say, I'm right here, right? And what you got to do is you got to look at what you're pointing to. What are you literally pointing to? You're pointing to a shirt. Okay, so if you took off this shirt and you held it up, is that you? That shirt you're wearing? Is that who you are? Is that you, that shirt? Hopefully not. Yeah, that shirt's not you, right? That shirt's not you. So let's throw that away. Let's get rid of the shirt. All right, where are you? Someone might point again. You got to look at what you're pointing to. You're pointing to skin. So if you took off your skin and you held it up, is that you? That skin you've got? Is that you? That skin? That's not you? Okay, so let's throw away the skin. Where are you? Someone might point again. We've got ribs, we've got muscles, we've got organs, we've got fluid and tissue and things like this. None of that is you. They're just little bits and pieces and parts. But the mind is going to grab onto this stuff and it's going to think that it's you, right? And you've got to be able to see true reality. That's what you're doing, is you're awakening to this wisdom to realize that this body isn't you and this mind is not you. Right? So slowly but surely, you need to get to the point where you realize non-self, where you realize that this body isn't you, this mind isn't you. And now when someone says, oh, all Americans are lovely and kind and wonderful and friendly, it's like, oh, thank you very much. But in your mind, you know that I'm not American. So when somebody says all Americans are blah, 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 they're not talking about me, because I'm not American. This body was born on a land that we refer to as America, but this mind doesn't identify that way, right? So we can understand that we're performing this role of a police officer, but the mind doesn't have to adopt the identity of I am a police officer, right? So there's all kinds of things that your mind might grab onto, is thinking that this is who you are. One time I had a student call me up and they scheduled an appointment with me and they said, David, I'm having such a hard time. I need your help. I said, okay, what's going on? They said, ever since COVID, everyone's going to this touchless payment system where you have to use a credit card or some kind of other device. And I'm going into places that I normally go into and I'm ordering a cup of coffee and they're turning a screen around and I need to push in some information in order to pay them. And it says, pay me a tip of 20%, 25%, 28%, 30%. And he's like, I just ordered a cup of coffee. I spent 30 seconds talking to this person. Do I really have to give him a tip? I feel so conflicted. I'm so uncomfortable. I am a great tipper. I don't understand why I feel so uncomfortable in this situation. I'm not tipping them, but I am a great tipper. And I was like, that's your personal existence view. Your mind's clinging to this, I am a great tipper. And now when you're not tipping, your mind feels conflicted in this situation, right? So your mind can cling to any number of things. I am a great tipper. I am kind. I am American. I am a police officer. I am a Buddhist teacher. I am a father. I am a husband. I am this. I am that. Any of this I am, you need to realize that you're not any of those things, right? There's a being here, that there's a body and there's a mind, and these have come together for this existence, but that doesn't define who you are as a person. So this is where you can get rid of all of that personal existence view and you can be more comfortable in this body, where you realize that this body is going to be constantly changing. It is not permanent, and this body doesn't define who you are. In this mind and the things that you experienced in life doesn't define who you are. You might have experienced things where maybe you've made decisions in the past to use drugs or alcohol or something like this. And maybe you've gone places where they've taught you to say, I am an addict or I am an alcoholic. And this is part of the recovery process of helping you to realize to never go back to those substances again. But I am not an alcoholic. I am not an addict. I might have chosen to use drugs and alcohol in the past. Those are decisions that I made, but that doesn't define who I am today as a person. So you can let go of all this identity and not cling to it as who you are as a person. So even your decisions that you make, sometimes people cling to those and think that that's who they are as a person. But what the Buddha is teaching you is that there is no self, that none of these things define who you are as a person. Okay, so I'm going to open up to questions about these 3 universal truths because, again, they're building blocks to help you understand the 4 noble truths. And then after this, we'll move into the 4 noble truths. So do you guys have any questions here or online? Remember, online, you can put those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So I think I saw you get your mic first. Yeah.
So back to discontentedness, the suffering, could the suffering be referring to the non-enlightened, that these feelings, whether happy or sad, are suffering because you're not enlightened yet?
Yes, but it doesn't really accurately describe the pleasant feelings, because when you're like, if your mom called you up and said, "Hey, I heard you got a new house. I'm going to come visit you. I'm going to bring a bunch of food. We're going to have a great time together," and you got so happy and excited about that, would you say you were suffering?
I guess it depends. If you're talking about trying to get to enlightenment, to where you don't have those highs and lows anymore, then you're technically still suffering.
If your boss gave you a raise and you got a whole bunch of money, would you say you were suffering?
I understand the point that you're making, but the point I'm making is that
I understand your point, but I'm helping you to be able to see that that's not suffering, in my opinion. And you can look at it however you like, but in order to get to this enlightened mental state, you need to be able to see these pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. And they're conditional pleasant feelings, not the unconditional ones. The conditional feelings, they're going to take the mind into this excited state, and then you're going to end up with the painful ones. So, for example, if I got so excited when someone said, "Wow, that white shirt looks really great on you. It brings out the colors of your eyes. You look so handsome." If I got really excited and got pleasant feelings about that, then when someone says, "Why are you wearing those white clothes? You look like a marshmallow man. Like, don't you know you're going to get like dirty if your motorbike breaks down and you got to like fix your motorbike? Why would you ever wear white clothes? That's so stupid," right? Now, if I allow my mind to get the pleasant feelings about the compliment, now when this comes along, you'll get angry and frustrated. So all of this is discontentedness, where the mind's shaken up. But I wouldn't say in that situation where the pleasant feelings are occurring that the mind is suffering, but there is discontentedness there that needs to be seen as part of the problem. Because when that person says a compliment, if you don't allow the mind to get the pleasant feelings, the conditional pleasant feelings, then when that changes and someone says something negative and degrading, you can maintain your peace and you can maintain your joy. But if you allow the mind to get these conditional pleasant feelings, the painful ones are waiting for you right around the corner. So if you got so excited because your mom cooked that lasagna, that she's famous for cooking that lasagna, now when you go to her house and she doesn't cook it, now you'll feel sad or frustrated. So it's like, "Oh wow, mom cooked the lasagna. This is great. Thanks, mom." You can do that without having conditioned pleasant feelings and getting so discontent about that, where the mind's shaken up. It's like, oh, if it was discontent, right? It's like, "Oh, mom, oh, you made the lasagna. Oh, I can't wait to eat it. Oh, it's going to be so great." But now let's just say she burns it and then it's not available. And now it's like, "Oh man, she burned it." Now you're frustrated or agitated. So if you see those pleasant feelings and you can describe them as discontentedness rather than suffering, then you can see they are part of the problem, and you've got to cut those off. And you're going to hear you need to cut those off and let them go. Otherwise, you're going to keep experiencing the painful feelings.
Is enlightenment permanent?
Yes.
That is permanent.
It's an unconditioned mental state that it's not being produced because of anything. So that's why it's permanent, because it's unconditioned. Where these feelings that we're talking about with discontentedness, this is a condition. These are conditional feelings. Based on some condition, your mind's going to experience a feeling. And now when that condition changes, and it will change because of impermanence, now your mind doesn't experience that happiness anymore. This is this is why somebody hasn't been able to experience permanent happiness, is because their happiness is conditional. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you're experiencing unconditioned mental qualities where the mind is just always happy because there's no condition that's causing it. So when you get rid of the pollutions of mind, now the mind is pure and it's no longer experiencing those conditional experiences any longer.
But it's not like the final state of consciousness a human can achieve, or there's something else. It's enlightenment and that's it.
Once you get to enlightenment, you're going to experience those mental qualities for the rest of this life, and then at death, or what some people refer to as death, the Buddha doesn't declare what comes next for an enlightened being. So he leaves it as an undeclared teaching. He specifically describes it. He says, remember, what did I teach? I taught this. And remember what I did not teach. I did not teach this. And he gives 10 things that he didn't teach. And that's one of those things that he didn't teach, is what comes next for an enlightened being. And I have certain reasons why I think he didn't teach it, but wisely he didn't teach it. It was really wise not to teach. If there was something next or there isn't something next, he just chose not to teach it.
So it's permanent until the person dies?
Well, he hasn't described what comes next.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's an unconditioned mental qualities, and unconditioned mental qualities are permanent.
Okay. And so what could actually define us as a person?
So a physical body and a mind that comes together that looks like this, we call this a human being. This is a person. So that's what the Buddha describes it. He says there's a body, there's a mind, and the combination of these two things is referred to as a person. And that's where sometimes people say, well, if there's no I, if there's no me, then what is attaining enlightenment? I am not attaining enlightenment. It's the mind. The mind is experiencing enlightenment. And the person is the one who's training the mind. Some people refer to this as the observer, if you ever have been around these kinds of things. So you have the body, the mind, and the person, the combination of these two things.
And, well, you were talking about people questioning or saying things about your clothes, and I was actually thinking about your clothes. So if monks or people that are Buddhist decide, for example, I see monks all the time wearing their orange, I don't know how to call this thing, their orange thing.
Robe.
Okay,
Robe.
and your white clothes. So, I mean, I kind of get it. They don't, they don't put pretty things in their bodies and things. They just prefer to use one thing. So they don't have to make preferences. But it's not already to have a preference just to use one kind of clothes. It's not kind of the same.
No, in fact, the reason why people do that is to help them realize non-self, where if you go to your closet and you're thinking, who am I going to see today and how do I want to look? And now you're kind of picking your clothing, that's your personal existence view. Whereas if you just wear the same thing every day, this takes your mind's ability to make that decision out of it. So your mind can't have that personal existence view when you wear the same exact clothes every day. That's not what you have to do in order to get to the elimination of personal existence view. There's other ways to do this. You could just take your clothes and stack them up on stacks and then just pick off the top of your stack. That takes the mind's ability out of it to have this personal existence view. Whereas if you're standing there in front of your closet and you're like, who am I going to see today? How do I want to look? You're just kind of contemplating that. That's the personal existence view taking over. So you'd like to get rid of that by not allowing the mind to make those choices. So one way to do that is to wear the same clothes every day and just wear basic, simple clothes. Another way to do that is to stack up your clothes and just pick off the top of the stack.
But what if, I don't know, you only have that robe and it's, I don't know, super cold or super, super hot, and you prefer to use shorts? You go like, I'm a monk. I don't have like personal view. It's not kind of the same.
No, wearing clothes for functionality is different than for personal existence view. And the monks, they actually have 3 robes. There's an inner robe, there's an outer robe, and then there's like this working sash that they wear. So depending on what they're doing, they will adjust their clothing. At least here in Thailand, they will adjust their clothing according to the environment. If they're going out to do some like formal event, they will have all their robes on with their outer robe. But there's also, like, if they're working around here, sometimes you'll see them just kind of wearing this kind of sash thing. So this is out of functionality. But the colors are always very basic and very muted. It's not very flamboyant and flashy. And this is helping to train the mind to not choose how to look in a certain way.
Do you know why it's orange?
Because during the lifetime of the Buddha, they used to dye it with things like jackfruit and other herbs. They would boil it in water, and it turns orange when you do this. There's a temple in Bangkok that still does this, where they use different herbs and different substances to dye it orange, so that it's just a very basic, very muted color.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. I think it was Galit or gentleman here. Yeah.
So the discontentedness, right, is translation from dukkha, from the word dukkha, which is from Pali language.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Another question. So Buddha supposedly did also teach people outside of temples, right? Regular people.
Mm-hmm.
And how, is there any notice in the books, in the writings? How did he begin? What was the entry point of what he was teaching? So what was the first point that he made sure that somebody who first came to his own environment got? So what was that? What was that Eightfold Path? Okay. Right. That is why I'm asking, because it makes so much.
The Four Noble Truths. That was the very first thing. And then the next thing after that is the moral conduct, which is in the Eightfold Path. So that's
why I'm asking, because it makes perfect sense to start with exactly that, to kind of segment life.
Yeah, you need to establish right view, because that's where you have the breakthrough to understanding what is causing your discontent feelings, because the whole path is to eliminate your discontent feelings, and you wouldn't be able to eliminate them if you didn't know what the cause was. So his very first teaching was to establish right view, and then after that work on your moral conduct.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say for me it's clear that the mind causes its own suffering, but I don't know, like the boiler, I don't know, I burn my eyes and then I cannot see anymore. So even though I know my mind, it's like it's craving permanence, it's like I know I could have this still mindset that where I don't feel sad or angry because I cannot see anymore, but I just I mean, I understand it, but I cannot get there. I mean, do I gotta do I gotta meditate more? Like because I kind of get it, you know, like it's not too difficult for me to understand that the mind is causing its own suffering, and because of this one can be free from that. But I don't know, like I can be in a situation and I can be like, okay, I can see my mind, it's the one causing the suffering, but I cannot stop it, even though I get it.
Yeah, because there's still the pollution in the mind. Right? It's not a matter of just intellectually understanding. Right now, you've learned the Four Noble Truths with me before. So intellectually, you understand that your mind is causing these feelings, but the pollution is still in the mind. You haven't fully trained the mind with the Eightfold Path to eradicate the pollution. So it's not a matter of like hearing a teaching for 5 minutes or 1 hour and then, well, wham, you're not going to be angry anymore. You need to have this gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress to get rid of these fetters out of the mind. And then that's what's going to produce the peace and the joy where you can always experience happiness, and you're not going to experience those discontent feelings anymore. Galit?
So the only way to eliminate painful feelings is to eliminate first the pleasant feelings?
The conditional pleasant feelings. Yeah, if you don't understand that the conditional pleasant feelings are part of the problem, you'll never eliminate the painful ones. And this is where it becomes somewhat challenging for the mind to understand, is because we can understand eliminating anger and sadness and frustration and all these painful feelings. Like, that makes perfect sense to people. But the idea of eliminating conditional pleasant feelings, people sometimes have a challenge with this, but you need to be able to understand the conditionality of these feelings ultimately leaves the mind unsatisfied, and there's dissatisfaction there, that because these feelings are based on some condition, that then when that condition changes, your mind's going to ultimately end up in the displeasure. Because it was allowed to get this conditional pleasant feeling, it's going to end up in the painful feelings. So there's this other type that you can get to, which is unconditioned mental qualities, which that's where the happiness and the joy is unconditioned, and it's just always happy and always joyful. But people oftentimes aren't familiar with that because they haven't necessarily experienced it before. So getting rid of these conditional pleasant feelings, where if this happens and 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 this happens, then I will be happy. If you get rid of all that conditionality, then you can just be happy all the time. Right? But as long as you allow your mind to have this conditional happiness, you'll experience the painful feelings. One of the ways to see this more clearly is if you think about, even though there's no such thing as conditional love, if you think about conditional love, like, okay, if you cook for me, I will love you. Or if you wash my car, I will love you. If you wash my clothes, I will love you. This is like conditional love. There's no such thing as conditional love, but we might call that conditional love. But then there's unconditional love, which is actually true love. That is like, hey, I just love you as you are. I would like to see you be well. I would like to have a genuine interest in seeing you be well. I don't want anything from you. I don't expect anything from you. I just love you the way you are. Which one of these would you rather have in your life? Someone who just loves you because of doing these things, or someone who just loves you as you are?
Obvious.
Yeah, easy answer, right? So it's the same thing. Is would you rather have these conditional happiness where you can only be happy when these certain things are happening, or would you rather just be happy all the time? Right? And that's what the enlightened mental state is.
Thank you. Follow up. Are there unconditional pleasant feelings prior to enlightenment?
There's no such thing as, oh, sorry.
No, that you can.
There's no such thing as a unconditional feeling. Anytime there's a feeling, it's conditional. So these are all the feelings. There's others as well. That's why I said etc., right? But anytime there's a feeling, it's always conditional. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have these conditional feelings. You have unconditioned mental qualities where you're just always experiencing these qualities of happiness and joy and peace and calm and serenity and all these different feelings, or all these different mental qualities that I talk about. You're just experiencing those all the time. It's just like the light is always on. But it's different because when I talk about unconditioned happiness, what somebody might be thinking about of happiness or excitement, they might think like bouncing off the walls, right? That's usually what we think about with happiness. That's not the happiness that we're talking about here. This is like just the mind is uplifted, it's bright, it's joyful. You're just always enjoying everything that's going on. You never have any disgruntledness or anger or frustration. The mind is just always uplifted. So this conditional happiness, that's not what unconditional happiness is. It's a very different experience having unconditioned happiness versus conditional happiness. The conditional happiness, it goes up and down and up and down. You might even be bouncing off the walls in some situations, where this unconditioned happiness, that's not the case, that your mind is just inwardly joyful and inwardly pleasant all the time.
So for us unenlightened people, one can't be just excited.
For an unenlightened being, you will be excited.
No,
I'm
sorry, unenlightened. Yeah.
Yeah, for an unenlightened being, unenlightened, right? An unenlightened being will experience excitement, but it's conditional. They will get excited because of something, but then when that thing changes, they will be sad or angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed. That's the problem, is the mind goes up and down. For an enlightened being, they'll just enjoy everything that they're doing. No matter what's happening, they'll be enjoying that.
Thank you.
Yep. And this is like, sometimes people say, well, would you enjoy if your mom died? Right? It's not that you enjoy the fact that she did die, right? Because that would be conditional. What you're doing is, despite the fact that she has died, you can maintain your joy and you can maintain your happiness. So you're happy despite the fact that she's died. Right? Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure if I understand the non-self concept correctly. So there is always like I. So for example, I'm worried about this. I'm planning to do that. I like that. I don't like that. So it's like a continuous consciousness that is I. So I understand you shouldn't identify with like social roles, with your job, or with like, but like, are you supposed to get rid of that I feeling? So
yeah, one of the things that we do in this book, in chapter 16, and in some of the other courses and retreats that I teach, I spend time teaching you how to proactively eliminate the personal existence view. Because one of the challenges that the mind has is it does say those things. Based on its lack of wisdom, it'll say, I am angry, or I am hungry, or I am thirsty. That's not actually true reality. What's truly happening is that the body needs water, or the body needs food, or the mind is experiencing anger. But because of personal existence view, and because of this language of English that we have, we tend to use words that reinforce personal existence view by saying things like, I am angry, I am hungry, I am sad, I am thirsty. In reality, that's not really the case. The true nature of this is that the body needs food, the body needs water, the mind is experiencing anger, the mind is experiencing sadness. So the Thai language, which was created in, with context to Buddhism, because Buddhism has been here for 800 to 1200 years, and the Thai language that they currently speak, I think it was created like 300 to 500 years ago. This language that they speak, it's been fully informed by Buddhist teachings. So when you speak Thai, you tend to speak in the third person. So like when my son comes home from school, I will say, how was Bailan's day at school? Instead of saying, how was your day at school? I'll say, how was Bailan's day at school? Or instead of saying, I would like to go to the movies, you might say, David would like to go to the movies. So you talk this way in Thai language because it's been formed around Buddhism, but the English language hasn't had that experience. So we need to be able to disassociate with this word I and me. So one of the proactive things that you do to train the mind to realize non-self and get rid of this personal existence view is you disassociate with this I. And you might, instead of saying, I am hungry, I am thirsty, I am this, you might say, the body needs food, or the mind is experiencing anger, or at least you're thinking that in your mind. And this will help you to disassociate with this and get to a point where you can realize non-self. And this is just one of many things that you can be doing proactively to strip away this personal existence view and get rid of it out of the mind. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So it can be also then deployed in lifestyle very simply by start talking in third person when referring to oneself. I mean, it maybe sounds a little bit strange, but like it's not that strange.
Yeah, about 90-95% of the times you can actually speak in ways that ensure that you're not reinforcing the self, and it actually works out better. Instead of saying to my son, like, I want you to wash the dishes, I might say, would you be interested in washing the dishes? Or can Bailan come and wash the dishes? Right? And this is like a better way to talk, because it's not like, I want you to do this. It's like more forceful, right? So you can change the way that you speak about 90-95% of the times. And this is like really helpful, but there's rare occasions where it doesn't sound quite right. Like when I introduce my son, I will say, this is my son, Bailan. Right? But he's not mine. He doesn't belong to me, right? My mind knows that. The mind knows that he's not mine. He doesn't belong to me. But the other option would be like, this is the being that I contributed sperm to 13 years ago. People would be like, huh? What are you talking about? Because that's true reality. That's what I've done, right? So about 90%, 95% of the time, you can use language that takes away this I and takes away this mind. Like instead of like, this is my phone, you can think like, this is the phone. Can you hand me the phone? Instead of, can you hand me my phone? Right? There's very possessive, then there's craving, and there's that I in there. So you need to change the way that you think in your mind, and that will ultimately change the way that you speak as well. But you'll see that you'll get along in the world much better when you speak this way. So there's a whole transformation that you need to do where you start perceiving the world in a different way, and you start interacting in the world in a different way than you do right now. And that's the transformation and the training that the mind goes through in order to get to this enlightened mental state.
Can we find some time and talk a little bit more about those alternative strategies? How to get rid of that personal existence view? I mean, maybe later, but like, what exactly could one do to reinforce this process?
There's in this course, I don't go into detail because it's a foundational course. Understanding the universal truth of non-self and realizing non-self is more kind of like an intermediate teaching. The retreat coming up in 2 weeks, there's a class, an entire class for about an hour and a half where I teach that in the group learning program. When we get to chapter 16 of this book, and you can start reading it now if you like. In chapter 16, I go through and explain personal existence view very thoroughly, and I explain to you in bulleted list form of all the different things you can do to get rid of the personal existence view. But we don't do it in this course.
Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me see if we have anything else. Okay, so now we're going to move on in our journey, okay? So now I've got this one more word or group of words to be able to share with you as building blocks to understand the Four Noble Truths. This is a definition that you're going to need to know, and you're going to need to understand what this is and how you experience this. This is called craving, desire, attachment, expectations, wants, holding, grasping, clinging. This is the mind longing and yearning, chasing after the objects of your affection, thinking the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some satisfaction. So if you've ever been in the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes and you were like, oh, a brand new pair of shoes. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, I can't wait to get those on my feet. They're going to look so good. Oh, I just can't wait. Or maybe it's a video game or a new phone, or maybe it's more money. The mind's longing, yearning for something. So have you seen this in your mind? Have you seen this? You're shaking your head. Yeah. Yeah. And the other people, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? The mind thinks the next new shiny object is going to provide lasting satisfaction. It's almost like an unquenchable thirst, right? The mind is just chasing and chasing and chasing and chasing. It's not the object itself. That's not the craving, desire, attachment. It's inside the mind. It's the longing, yearning for this particular thing. Okay, so this is a craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations. Okay, so now we're going to study the Four Noble Truths. This is where you can have a breakthrough to understand the problem, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. So the first Noble Truth is explaining the problem. Everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness, those conditional, pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. That's the problem. The mind's going up and down, up and down, up and down. It's only a matter of time. This is the problem, the discontentedness. The second Noble Truth explains discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. Okay, so I'm going to say that a few times and I'll give you some examples to be able to understand it. Those discontent feelings, the pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant, they're being caused by craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the wanting things to be a certain way, the expectations. And the mind wants things to be permanent, but yet everything in the world around you is impermanent. Okay, so let me explain this to you with some examples. Think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you first got together with and you were so excited. You were so happy. You got all these pleasant feelings. They were showing you affection. They were sending you text messages. They were checking in on you. You might have been going to dinner, to the movies. You might have been going to the park, having great conversations. You might have been having intimate contact, sexual contact. You got all these pleasant feelings. It couldn't be better, especially at the very beginning, right? It was so wonderful. But then over time, you started having expectations of them and wanting them to be a certain way. And they started having expectations of you and wanting you to be a certain way. And now you guys ended up breaking up and you went different directions, right? And now you might have been lonely or bored. You might have missed this person. You might have felt angry or frustrated. This is the mind holding on and craving permanence, wanting this relationship to be permanent. The mind didn't understand the universal truth of impermanence. It didn't have that wisdom. So because of the mind's lack of wisdom, it was craving and it was clinging and it was holding on, wanting this relationship to be permanent. And even if you guys were together for the rest of your lives, more likely than not, one of you would have died first. Right? So this relationship was always impermanent from the very beginning, but the mind was holding on and craving this permanence. And now you were lonely or bored or angry or frustrated or sad, right? This is not because of the love. Oftentimes we think it's because I cared too much or I loved them. That's why you're sad. The love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. That doesn't cause the sadness and anger. Right? It's the mind craving permanence. You can see this in other relationship situations too. Think back to grandma and grandpa or mom or dad or brothers and sisters as they might have died in your life. You might have been grieving or sorrowful during this period of time. And it's not because you're a bad person or you've done anything wrong. It's just because the mind's craving permanence. If grandma and grandpa's alive, you'll be happy because the mind's getting what it wants. That craving is being fulfilled. But when they die, the mind's experiencing this impermanence and it doesn't understand that impermanence. It's craving permanence. It wants grandma and grandpa to be permanent. So now when they die, you experience the grief and the sadness and the sorrow. Or if you've ever been to a wedding and maybe you or the people around you were grieving and crying, maybe brother or sister or cousins or friend is going off into the world in this wedding. And now maybe you're crying or you're grieving or the people around you are grieving. This is because they're craving permanence. It's like, hold on a second. That's my brother. How can she be taking my brother away from me? Right? Or how can he be taking my sister? Like they're going off into the world. What about me? Right? Like this is the mind. It's grieving because it's craving permanence. It's holding on to this person. And this is why mom and dad or brothers and sisters or other people could be grieving at a particular wedding because the mind's craving permanence. It can also happen when you get dropped off at a university, or maybe if you can think back to when you were going to school for the first time at like 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. The kids are crying and they're grieving because they thought mom and dad were permanent. They were holding on to mom and dad, craving permanence, and now here they go off into the world. without mom and dad, right? This is some examples around relationships. But here's another example. Say you got a brand new car and you were like saving up money for this brand new car, and you drove this brand new car off of the dealership parking lot, and you were so proud of this car, and you parked it at a store and you went inside. And now when you come outside, there's a scratch on your car. You might be sad or frustrated or angry. You might be ready to kill somebody that they've scratched your car. That anger that is arising, it's not coming from that person. That person didn't cause your anger. And it's not the scratch. That's not what's causing it. What's causing it is the mind is craving permanence. It's wanting the car to look permanently beautiful. Now, we're not talking about what's wise or unwise here, because when we walk through a parking lot, we aspire not to scratch anybody's car. That's what we would like to do. But because of impermanence, this car is going to get a scratch. It'd be wonderful if nobody ever scratched our car, but that's not the world we live in. We live in an impermanent world, and the mind's going to crave permanence. So it's only a matter of time before someone's pushing a shopping cart through the parking lot, the wind blows or they lose control of it, and boom, it scratches your car. And even if that doesn't happen, the paint's going to fade, the tires are going to need to change, the upholstery is going to get ripped or torn. This car is impermanent. It's going to change, right? But if your mind craves permanence, then you're going to feel sad or frustrated or angry during this period of time. So this is some examples for you to be able to see. And I could give you other examples too. But the best way for you guys to see this and have the breakthrough, because you need to independently verify this second noble truth. Don't believe what I'm telling you, because what I'm sharing with you is that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings. It's your cravings, it's your desires, your attachments. Don't believe this, and don't just use the examples that I'm sharing with you. Think about your own life. Think about a situation where you've been angry or sad or frustrated or even happy or excited. It might have been today. It might have been yesterday. It might have been last week. At that time, you might have been looking for someone else to blame, because that's what the mind usually does. When you get angry or sad or frustrated, you might be looking for someone else to blame for the feelings that you're experiencing. But now with these fresh eyes and this new wisdom, look at that situation and figure out, what were you wanting? What were you expecting? What were you craving? And if you would have got it, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, you were angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. Do you see it? Can you see it? If you can't, let me know. We can talk about it. Because I've had students say to me before, I had a student raise their hand one time, or at least talk to me by phone. They're like, David, I went to work the other day. My house looked so beautiful. And I went to work and I came home and I got frustrated. My wife had this craft project all over the house. How did I cause my own discontent feelings? She's the one who messed up the house. Didn't she cause me to be frustrated? And the answer is no. Your mind caused it itself, because when you went to work, you had a certain craving, a certain expectation. You wanted this house to look a certain way permanently. And when you came home and it didn't look that way, you experienced this impermanence, this change, and your mind didn't like that. And that's why you got frustrated. And this house can't look that way permanently. It's not possible. But also this craft project, that's not permanent either. She's going to put it away. Right? And maybe you'll help her put it away too. But if your mind goes to work craving permanence for your house to look a certain way, then when you leave and come back and it doesn't look that way, you'll be frustrated or angry or irritated. This is the mind causing its own discontent feelings. And with this lack of wisdom of the second noble truth, the mind typically, when it feels those painful feelings, it will push this person away, or will push a situation away. This might be what you've done in the past. This is called aversion. That when you feel angry, when you feel frustrated, you think it's this external thing that's causing it, so you will tend to push it away. You might have pushed friends or family members out of your life, or you might have pushed a certain situation out of your life. This is called aversion. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people with your intentions, your speech, and your actions. This is the unskillfulness. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, because the mind thinks, if I can just get what I want, then everything will be perfect. So you might growl and roar at this other human being, trying to convince them to do things your way. Or the third thing you might do is you'll put your expectations on people and try to control them and force them to do things your way. You've probably been in arguments before where you've been adamantly trying to convince somebody, you have to stop doing what you're doing because you are making me angry. And if you don't stop doing that, I'm going to keep getting angry. Right? You've probably been adamantly arguing with people, trying to convince them of this. But in reality, what's been going on the whole time is your mind having craving, desire, attachment is causing these feelings. And by you being able to see this, you can actually break through to understanding what's causing these feelings so that you can actually eliminate them. If you keep believing that other people are causing these feelings, you'll never actually solve them, because you'll go around the world pushing people away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, putting your expectations on people, and you'll just have broken relationship after broken relationship, and you'll never be able to live with all beings harmoniously, right? So you might even go out into the world and try to teach other people to do things your way, right? You might start trying to tell other people how to do things in their life, and you think that if they'll just do it your way, everything will be perfect. This is the mind trying to get other people to do things your way, instead of understanding the natural laws that everybody's going to do things differently. That's impermanence, right? So if you can have a breakthrough here to understanding that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, you don't have to go around and train 8 billion people to do things your way. You can get to peace by training just one mind. Do you know whose mind you need to train? Whose mind do you have to train? Whose? Your own, right? Your job just got so much easier. I just eliminated 7.999 billion people that you need to train, right? You only need to train one, right? Wow, that's so much easier. But that's going to be challenging enough to train your own mind, right? So the second noble truth is helping you see that your own mind is causing these feelings through craving, desire, attachment. And you need to independently verify this so you can see it yourself. And the way that you practice this is that now and forever, whenever you're experiencing discontentedness, don't look external for the problem. Don't look external and blame other people. Look inward. Be introspective. Figure out, what are my cravings here? Why am I so angry? There's some cravings, desires, attachments here. And if you can figure that out, then you can actually get to a real solution. And where you have trouble figuring that out, you can come and talk with me and I'll help you to be able to find your cravings, desires, attachments. Because if you can identify your cravings, desires, attachments, then the third noble truth comes in. You can eliminate your discontentedness by eliminating your cravings, desires, attachments. Right? If you can eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, since that's the cause of the discontent feelings, you can eliminate your discontent feelings. When you get rid of the cause, then you won't experience the effect. Right? So by eliminating your cravings, desires, attachments, you'll eliminate your discontent feelings. And the way that you do that is through the fourth noble truth. The path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. This is the complete perfect plan that's going to guide you in eliminating your cravings, desires, attachments. So it all starts with right view. It's the complete perfect plan. It starts with the foundation of right view. What wrong view would be is to blame other people for the feelings that you're experiencing. That would be wrong view. And there's no way you're going to get to enlightenment with wrong view, because wrong view, you're blaming everyone else for the feelings that you're experiencing. But when you establish right view and you can see properly that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, now it's just a matter of training your mind and you can get to the peace and get to the joy. So that's why the path starts with right view. That's why the Buddha started people off with right view, because you need to first know that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, or else you'll never actually be able to solve it. This is why you've not been able to solve it yet, because the mind has firmly believed that other people are causing you to be angry, and you might have been out there trying to convince other people to do things a certain way. So when you establish right view, now you build on top of that. We go to right intention. And these aren't going to take the same amount of time for me to teach you because they're a lot shorter. But right view, we need to really take our time to walk through it. What right intention is, here's the words of the Buddha. In what, monks, is right intention? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. This is called right intention. right? So there's three things here. Some people translate this as right thinking or right thought. That's what an intention is, that you like the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. Renunciation is the interest and willingness to let go and give up unwholesomeness in the mind's false beliefs and misperceptions, the false perceptions of reality. One of the very first things that you need to practice the intention of renunciation with is you need to eliminate the belief that other people are causing you to be angry, right? But you're not getting rid of your false beliefs and bringing in new beliefs. That's not what you're doing on the path. You're bringing in wisdom. And when you see the truth and when you're bringing in wisdom and you can see, oh my goodness, I've been believing this all my life. And now I see the wisdom that this is untrue. Now you get rid of that false belief and now you've got wisdom, right? And that's how you get to enlightenment, is by practicing renunciation. Because there's certain unwholesome things that you're doing right now that you're going to need to be willing to let go of. Right? And if you're not willing to do that, if you don't create that intention of renunciation in the mind, you're going to just hold on to the things that you're currently doing. So you need to be willing to let go. That's what the intention of renunciation is. Then there's the intention of non-ill will. What ill will is animosity and bitterness, anger, hatred, and ill will, and all those lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance, and so forth. So if you have the intention of non-ill will, this is a double negative. And in English, when you have a double negative, it's a positive. So this is the same thing as saying the intention of goodwill. So you would like to have the intention of goodwill towards all beings, this loving kindness, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Then you would like to practice the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to other beings. Because as long as you're putting out harm towards others, this harm is going to come back to you. So you need the intention or the thinking or the thought of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to other beings. And this is what's going to help you to now build this foundation to get to the moral conduct. So this wisdom section is based in right view, where you understand it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, and right intention, where you're practicing the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. So just as a recap, right view is the Four Noble Truths and accepting responsibility for your own feelings, intentions, speech, and actions. Because oftentimes you might blame these things on other people, but you need to accept responsibility for your own feelings and your own actions and the things that you are choosing to do in your life. And by having that responsibility and that accountability, now you can actually do something about it. Whereas if it's other people that are causing these things, you have no ability to change any of that. Then you need right intention, which is the practice of the intention of renunciation, where you're willing to let go and give up your false beliefs, your false opinions and views, your unwholesomeness, the intention of non-ill will, or practicing this goodwill, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, and the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. So do you guys have any questions on this wisdom section of the Eightfold Path? Backwards? Here? Yeah? Okay, looks like you guys don't have questions. Let me check online. I don't see any questions here either. So, okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a little bit of a break for you guys. And then when we come back, I'm going to move into this moral conduct section and the mental discipline section. Because now that you have this wisdom built up, now it's time to talk about the moral conduct, because this is one of the ways that you're harming people, is through your moral conduct. If you haven't studied the teachings of the Buddha, there's certain things you're doing that are going to be harmful. So now you can learn how to clean that up. So right now it's basically 10:47. Let's take a break until 10:05. I know that's a little bit odd, but let's just say 10:05, which is basically 18 minutes from now, and then I'll pick it up from here. Okay. So thank you guys for your questions, and I'll see you guys in a bit. Okay. Or 11:05. 11:05. okay, I'm going to pick things up where we left off with the Eightfold Path. We're now going to be moving into right speech, right action, and right livelihood. This is moving into the moral conduct section, because once you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these discontent feelings, then it's a matter of cleaning up your moral conduct. Because so far, in the past, you might have been bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, thinking that they're the ones who are causing you to be angry or frustrated. But once you understand that that's not true, now you're going to need to clean up your moral conduct and interact with people in a wise way, because as long as you continue to put harm out through your intentions, speech, and actions, this is going to keep coming back to you. So you're going to need to clean that up. It's kind of like a pipe has busted, and now you're not going to go clean up the mess. You're going to stop the pipe. You're going to stop the oil from being spewing all over the world, right? So you'd like to stop this bitterness and hostility and this anger spewing all throughout the world. So whenever you're learning moral conduct with the Buddha, it's important to understand that he's not giving you rules or commandments. He's helping you to understand this natural law, this cause and effect, or this action and result, the natural law of karma. Some people refer to this as karma, but this is from the Sanskrit language. Those people who study the original teachings of the Buddha will tend to use the Pali word, which is karma, and this refers to this natural law of cause and effect, or action and result. It's nothing mystical or magical. There's no being who's overseeing this. It's not about punishments and rewards. It's not about blame or who's at fault or anything like this. It's not a black cloud that's following you around. It's literally like a sequence of events that when you make a decision, either wisely or unwisely, you're going to experience results, either wholesome karma or wholesome results, or if you make a decision unwisely, it's going to experience unwholesome karma or unwholesome results. So it's your life, it's your decisions, and it's your results. Everything you experience in life is a function of decisions that you're making. So the Buddha is going to help you understand how to make wise decisions around your moral conduct. Because if you can clean up your moral conduct and the way you interact with others, then slowly but surely you can transform your mind and transform your relationships. But as long as you keep believing that it's other people causing your anger, you might continue to be bitter and harsh and hostile with those people. And then that's just going to come back to you. So the Buddha is going to teach you here through right speech, right action, and right livelihood of how to interact based on these natural laws. And you're not believing this, right? You're going to learn it, reflect on it, it's independently verified, and practice it. So this first one here is right speech, where he says, "And what, monks, is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech." So there's 4 things here, and these are all based on craving, desire, attachment. Because remember, you're working to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, and that comes through in the speech and the way you interact with people. So he's teaching you through the Eightfold Path of how to eliminate your longing, your yearning, your craving. Because when we lie in the past, like maybe you've lied as a child, there was something that you wanted. You wanted something. You were longing, yearning for it. And if you told the truth, you weren't going to get it. So you lied in order to try to get what you wanted. But when you lie, people discover those lies and they see you as being undependable and unreliable and untrustworthy. And it affects you in a negative way. You experience unwholesome karma or unwholesome results when you lie. And then if you've spoken with slander or gossip, this is where you're diminishing or degrading somebody else's reputation. There's a craving there. The mind wants to look good in front of other people, and the mind thinks, if I degrade this person and make them look bad, then I'm going to look better, right? This is like entering into a room and you have a candle and somebody else has a candle, and the mind thinks, well, if I put out their candle, my candle will shine brighter. But in reality, if you're in a dark room, you would like as many candles as possible. No need to put out everybody else's candle, right? So if you've done any gossiping or slandering, you've seen that it's produced unwholesome results, right? At the very least, when you have your back turned in these situations, those people that you've been gossiping to, they're going to gossip about you. They're going to slander you. But at the height of this, people have actually been murdered, right? If you look at the world, you can see investigative reporters going into the news and reporting about somebody, and they sometimes end up dead, right? And I'm not explaining to you the way the world should be. I'm explaining to you the way the world is, that if you gossip and slander people, you're causing harm to their reputation, and now they're going to want to cause harm to you. So getting rid of that craving to diminish others and make others look bad. This will help you to eliminate your craving, and thus it will produce wholesome results for you. Then there's harsh speech. This is your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. When you have a craving, desire, attachment, and you want things to be a certain way, you'll be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to convince this animal to do things your way. There's a craving there. The mind's wanting things to be a certain way. So you're going to need to pay attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. You're not going to be able to just snap your fingers and instantly speak without harsh speech, because you've got cravings in your mind. You're going to see that this whole entire path is going to be working together to be able to help you to be able to put these things into place. So the people that you have cravings, desires, attachments with in your relationships, you're going to find it very challenging. You're going to be bitter and harsh and hostile, but you're going to need to gradually transform this, because as long as you continue to put that out, that's what's going to come back to you. Then there's frivolous speech. What this is sometimes referred to as idle chatter. If you or somebody you know has ever been like, yada 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 yada, a yada 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 yada, a yada 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 yada. It's like, oh my goodness, when is this person going to stop? Oh wow, so much speech, right? This is like a craving to talk, right? So if you've ever done that, what you'll see is that people are going to not think of you as being influential. People are going to tune you out. They're not going to be interested in listening to you. But if you're purposeful and you speak beneficially, where you have a certain purpose in your speech, you can have an actual conversation. Because when there's frivolous speech, that yada, 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 it's a broadcast. It's not actually a conversation. And you're not interested in going into the world and broadcasting. You would like to have a conversation with people, right? So if you have frivolous speech, it means you're just talking unpurposefully, unbeneficially. And you would like to have clear and concise and well thought out speech, because then it makes it easier for the people who are listening to you to understand what it is that you're saying, right? So you would like to have this very purposeful, beneficial speech instead of frivolous speech. So this is like the top line of speech here with what the Buddha is teaching you under the Eightfold Path. But then he has other teachings that plug into this that you're going to need to learn and be able to then practice. So the 5 factors of well-spoken speech is a deeper level of teaching that you would like to bring into your life and start to practice more and more readily. These 5 factors of well-spoken speech is to speak at the proper time. What you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. What it means to speak at the proper time is that you're not interrupting people. If you're interrupting people, you know that you don't like it when people interrupt you. You're not going to be able to have harmonious relationships if you continue to interrupt people, right? The other part of this is to make sure that your mind, that it's the proper time. If you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're agitated or annoyed or any of those other discontent feelings, it's not the proper time for you to talk. The only thing that's going to come out is anger and hostility. And you're going to damage your relationships. And then you would like to make sure it's the proper time for the other person to talk. If they're angry or bitter or harsh or hostile themselves, it doesn't make sense to talk in that situation. So it's not the proper time to talk. So you would like to delay your conversation, right? So if you got a notice in the mail that you're late on your rent and your partner or your roommate is coming home and they just got home from work and you're like, oh, hey, we forgot to pay our rent. We're going to get kicked out in 3 days if we don't pay this. This isn't the proper time to talk. They just walked in. They just got home from work. Let them put their bags down. Let them take off their shoes. Let them get some water and food. Now, 30 minutes, an hour into it. Hey, honey, we forgot to pay our rent, right? Or you might say, hey, honey, is this a good time to talk? Right? And they might say, no, it's been a really hard day at work. Can we talk about this tomorrow? Well, if you don't have a craving in your mind, you should be like, sure, we can talk tomorrow. No worries. Right? But if you have a craving and a desire, you want to talk right now, right? Or maybe they say, yes, this is a good time to talk. What do you got? And then that's where you share it with them. So you'd like to check in with people and make sure that it's a good time for them to talk, especially if it's something that's impactful, right? Then the next one is speaking the truth. That's covered in the top part of right speech. Speaking gently. That's also covered in the top part. That's paying attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. The English language is pretty tricky. You need to really pay attention to that. Other languages, it's really easy in some cases to speak this way with a tone, tempo, and word choice that is polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. Like in the Thai language, there's all kinds of words that you can use to ensure that people know you're being polite and respectful. But we don't always have those in the English language, but we used to. Like sir and ma'am, or thank you, or please, or things like this. We're going to need to use those in our English language in order to help people to understand, hey, I'm being respectful with you here. I'm being polite with you here. And this will help you to make gentle speech. So you might need to bring some of that up and start using it where you maybe haven't used it in the past. I even use it with my son, my 12-year-old son. Last night, he was helping me at home with some things, and I do this regularly where I'll say, thank you, sir. I appreciate that, right? And you can say that to your children or to the people around you, or even your mom or your dad. You can say sir and ma'am and things like this if you're speaking in English with them. Then there's speaking beneficially. Speaking beneficially is to be clear and concise about what it is that you're saying. It's not, rather than meandering around and kind of rambling and chit chat, you would like to be very clear and concise when you're communicating. And then people will be more interested in listening to you, and they'll be able to benefit from what it is that you have to say. Then there's speaking with a mind of loving kindness. This is the warmth, the genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. The opposite of loving kindness would be inner hate. If you speak with inner hate or anger, this isn't going to produce beneficial results or wholesome results, wholesome karma. It's not going to produce wholesome karma in your life. So these are the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. And you can take these 5 factors of well-spoken speech and you can independently verify them. Think about times where your conversations did not go well. Look at these. You either missed 1 or 2 or 3, or maybe you missed all of them, right? And your conversation didn't go well. Maybe they didn't practice them either, the other person, right? But now look at these in a different way. Look at conversations that have gone well, because you've had conversations that have gone really well. And look at these 5 factors. You and the other person was practicing these, and that's why your conversation went well. And that's how you independently verify these as a natural law, because you weren't even aware of these, but you were practicing them. And that's why your conversation went well. Right? Because these natural laws are affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. So in the past, you weren't aware of these, and in some cases you practiced them, and your conversation went really well. But now what you would like to do is consciously practice these in all your different relationships. And it's going to take time, particularly with mom and dad and brothers and sisters and life partners and people like this. It's going to be challenging for you to bring your practice up to that level, but slowly but surely you would like to do that. And then you'll be practicing and developing something in Thai that we refer to as barami. This is a Thai word. It's barami. What the word barami means is it means the one who people listen to. If you practice the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, you will become one who people listen to. In Thai villages, there's usually elders that people know, like these people are really successful. And if you need help with anything in your life, go visit them and you'll be able to get some help. And when I say they're successful in life, I don't mean financially. I mean that they're really successful in their relationships. And people know that these people are very successful in their relationships, and they have barami. They're the one who people listen to. And you can establish this in your relationships, whether it's in personal life or your professional life. You can become one who people listen to. But if you're out there being bitter and harsh and hostile, if you're lying, if you're doing these things, you're speaking unbeneficially, you're speaking with a mind of inner hate, things like this, people aren't going to be influenced by what it is that you have to say. So if you can establish barami through practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, you'll be able to be influential in the communities that you are in, both personally and professionally. Now, during the lifetime of the Buddha, they referred to this as right speech, because that's all that was going on during his lifetime. Nowadays, we have a lot of other things. We have text messages, social media posts, emails, voice messages, all kinds of ways of communicating with people. So we might think about this as right communication instead of right speech. Because if you're angry and you're hostile and you go over to your keyboard on your computer and you're pounding out an email, that's not the proper time to be communicating, right? So you might hit save instead of send, right? Don't hit send, because once you put that out into the world, it's going to come back to you. So you would like to restrain the mind and be able to make sure you're practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech in all situations. Because you could go to a job interview and you could knock it out of the park and your speech could be amazing. And these people are like, wow, I'm going to hire this person. I'm going to give them a big salary. But then they go look at your social media and they see you're bitter and harsh and hostile. You're probably not going to get the job based on that, right? So you would like all your communication, no matter where you're communicating, you would like it to be using these 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And this is what's going to produce the best results for you. And slowly but surely, you can clear out your relationships and you can establish parami, the one who people listen to. So as you're learning these 5 factors of well-spoken speech and you're dialing them into your life more and more, you might be in certain situations where you're kind of struggling and you're not quite sure what is the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, or what are the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. If you can remember to speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, this will really help you. You need to know the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, and that's what's going to lead to your enlightenment. But sometimes you might be stuck, especially for the next few months as you're starting to learn these teachings. If you can just remember polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, this is going to help you a lot. Okay, and in the book, I have a whole lot of details about speech, because we can harm through our speech. And I go through each one of those 5 factors and I explain it in detail. So if you read the book, you'll be able to see there what I teach about these 5 factors of well-spoken speech and all the other speech, because this is an area that you're most likely going to need to improve. Okay, then there's right action. Right action. These are the words of the Buddha. I'm going to get to questions in a moment. This is right action. And what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action. So here the Buddha is giving you 3 impactful actions that you could do with the body that is going to cause harm, and then harm is going to come back to you. He's not giving you a complete exhaustive list. He's just giving you 3 very big impactful ones. But if you understand this factor, then you understand that it's unwise to cause any kind of harm with your bodily actions. Notice he doesn't say, don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face. Well, of course, you can figure that out if you understand what this step is, right? Or notice he doesn't say, don't drag your suitcase through the aisle of the airplane and run over people's feet and bump into their knees, because airplanes didn't even exist during his lifetime, right? But if we understand this step, that we're not interested in causing harm through our bodily actions, then we can understand what this is and we can apply it in all aspects of our life. He's just giving you 3 really big impactful ones, and then you're going to have to figure out all the others to ensure that you're not causing harm through your bodily actions. Now here, I like to point out where he talks about refraining from sexual misconduct in these others. These are just a general way to refer to the 5 precepts. Tomorrow, I'm going to be teaching you the 5 precepts. That's where he gives you the full details of what these things mean. Right here, he's just saying sexual misconduct. But in the 5 precepts, he expands it and he explains to you exactly what sexual misconduct is. And I like to give you a heads up that it doesn't include same-gender relationships, because some people, when they see this right away, they think, that must be same-gender relationships. No, the Buddha understood that same-gender relationships isn't causing harm. If you have 2 loyal, loving, consenting adults that are choosing to have sex with each other, they're not causing harm to anybody. So whether it's a male and a female, or a male and a male, or a female and a female, they're not actually causing harm. And if we understand the universal truth of impermanence, then we understand that there has never been a time in history where all men had sex with women and all women had sex with men. There's never been a time like that since the beginning of humanity. The universal truth of impermanence tells us that. And in the teachings of the Buddha, he was aware of same-gender relationships and that people had these kinds of experiences because he talks about it. You can see it in his teachings, but he doesn't teach anything about it. He's just making the observation that it's occurring, right? And he just mentions to his students like, hey, here's this situation, and that's it. So he was aware of these things, and it's been happening ever since the beginning of humanity. Because of the universal truth of impermanence, not everybody's going to be interested in having sex with the opposite gender. But we're going to go into this in more detail tomorrow when we talk about the 5 precepts. So here, right action is ensuring that you're not causing harm through your bodily action. And the Buddha teaches these, and he teaches others as well, but you're going to need to apply this to your life. So he even teaches about substances that cause heedlessness and gambling cursing and things of this nature. But there's going to be many things, like even if you're walking down the street and you step on someone's foot or you bump into their shoulder, you're probably going to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir, I apologize," or "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, I apologize." Right away, you're going to clean that up, right? Whereas if you just haphazardly walk down the street, bumping into people, stepping on people's feet, you're probably going to get in a fight. Someone's going to punch you, right? It's only a matter of time, because unenlightened beings, they don't like that impermanence, being bumped into and stepped on and things like this. Someone's going to do something that's going to bring this harm back to you. So you would like to get to the point where you're paying attention to your bodily actions and you're not causing any harm through your bodily actions. Then we have right livelihood. A livelihood is how you choose to sustain your life in the world. And the Buddha is teaching you that it would be unwise to sustain your life through harming other beings. So in the Eightfold Path, he says, "In what, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, the noble disciple, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood." So he just says something general and broad, because the teaching on right livelihood is much deeper, and he has it in other parts of his teachings that plug into the Eightfold Path. So this is what we call the first fold of purification for your livelihood. He teaches that it would be unwise to have business in weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. And once again, you can independently verify these things, right? That if you have had, or you know people that have had, or you've seen in the news, people that have had livelihoods based on these things, they're experiencing all kinds of unwholesome results based on that. So you can independently reflect on each one of these and see that truth for yourself. So he's teaching you that it would be unwise to sustain your life off of causing harm to other beings. Let's just take one of these, like business in substances that cause heedlessness. If I stood on the street corner and I was selling crystal methamphetamine and heroin into the neighborhood, I'm causing harm. And now this harm is going to come back to me. Standing on that street corner, I can easily get beat up. I can get robbed. I could get murdered. I can get arrested by the police. I can get addicted to the substance, right? All these different problems can happen as a result of me choosing to sustain my life off of substances that cause heedlessness. So in most places, standing on a street corner and selling these kind of illicit drugs is illegal, right? But here, this is the natural law of karma. This is a much higher law than just the human laws. The human laws are imperfect. They're not going to function perfectly. So like a government could say, "Hey, you can work in that liquor store. You can go be a cashier over there. We're not going to arrest you for that. Feel free to go do that," right? And you're not going to get arrested for that. But the natural law of karma is functioning at all times, and it doesn't conform to the human laws. If you go get that job at that liquor store, once again, you could easily get beat up, you could get murdered, you could get robbed. Oftentimes people who are coming to those places are heedless, so they're going to potentially do these kinds of things. And at the very least, you're going to be dealing with intoxicated people throughout your day. And if you're trying to get to the peace and joy where your mind is always peaceful and your life is always peaceful, if you're dealing with intoxicated people all the time, it's going to be very challenging for you to experience that, right? So this natural law is something that is functioning at a much higher level. And you might decide, like, yeah, it's really unwise for me to take this job as a cashier at this liquor store because I'm not interested in dealing with that kind of stuff. So this natural law is functioning at a much higher level than the human laws that we're used to. So this, and then this next thing, is what we call the first fold of purification of your livelihood. Not only does the Buddha talk about certain types of livelihood that would be unwise, but he talks about how to perform your livelihood, because he's trying to help you to get to a point where you can have nothing but success in your profession. And here he's talking about eliminating scheming, flattery, hinting, belittling, pursuing gain with gain. These are all ways that you perform your livelihood. What scheming is like corruption. So say I was a politician. That's not one of those 5 livelihoods. I'm not causing harm by being a mayor of a city. I'm not causing harm by writing laws or something like this. But if I was scheming and I was corrupt, now this is going to cause harm, and this is going to potentially lead to difficulties for me because of the unwholesome karma that I'm going to experience. Because now I'm 10 or 15 years into my career. People found out that I'm corrupt and I don't get reelected. And now I have a difficulty sustaining my life and supporting myself because I can't get an actual job, right? So if you're scheming within your livelihood, this is going to cause problems if you're corrupt. Or if you have flattery. What flattery is like having insincere comments where you're just trying to get people to buy things from you. If you've ever been to a store where you walked in and they were like, oh, that shirt looks so beautiful. You're so nice. Oh, your hair is so wonderful. I've got these perfect earrings that'll go excellent with that shirt. Come here, take a look at this, right? They're just trying to flatter you in order to get you to buy something. You might have felt like, I don't really like this place. You probably felt like, I don't even want to buy anything here. You might have just turned around and left. Right? So this is what flattery is, where you're just trying to flatter people to do business with you, try to give them insincere comments. So the Buddha teaches you not to do that. Hinting is to not be clear and concise about the work that you're doing. So if all of us were on a project team and we needed to go in and brief the boss about the work that we're doing, we should be clear and concise about the work that we're doing and helping them to understand where we are on this project. Whereas if we're hinting around and we're not quite clear, this doesn't promote the best opportunity for success in our career. Belittling is to be degrading or diminishing to other people, like our coworkers, our business partners, even our competition. If we're belittling and degrading our competition, then this doesn't look really good for us, right? And our customers aren't going to be interested in doing business with us. In fact, I was just talking with somebody just recently because we had some people come into our house because we're trying to do some work on our house. And this one company was degrading and belittling some other vendors that do the same kind of work that they do. And I wasn't even interested in doing work with these people because of the way that they were talking in such a negative and degrading way about other vendors. So you'll see this, that if you do this with other people in your profession, sometimes we think that we're supposed to degrade our competition. No, you don't have to. If somebody asks you about your competition, you can just say, I'm not quite sure what they do, but if you'd like to receive service with them, you're more than welcome to. But what I can do for you is I can do this, and here's what I do. Right? And you can just stay focused on that. So we don't need to belittle people, whether it's our coworkers, our business partners, our competition. We don't need to degrade people to make ourselves look better. Right? This is going to affect you in your livelihood. Then there's pursuing gain with gain. What this is where you're just doing something for money and you could care less about the product or service. You don't really have an interest in this thing at all. You're just kind of collecting a paycheck. If you've ever had that kind of job before, it probably felt very dull, very mundane. You might have dragged yourself to work. Maybe at first when you got the job, you were really excited because you were making all kinds of money. But then after 3 months or 6 months, that kind of wears off and you just feel like dull and mundane and unmotivated to go to work. What the Buddha is teaching you is how to get to a point where you're enthusiastic and you enjoy your work. You have ambition and motivation. Sometimes we think about work as something negative and degrading, and it's like, I don't want to go to work, right? But you can get to a point where you thoroughly enjoy what you do on a day-to-day basis. 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, however many hours a day you do it, that you thoroughly enjoy what that is that you're doing. Work doesn't have to be mundane. It doesn't have to be painful. But oftentimes people aren't practicing right livelihood and they've selected a job just based on money and that's all they care about. And now it feels like such a drag to go do this work. But the Buddha is teaching you how to get to a point where you have enthusiasm and ambition and motivation to do this actual work that you're doing. And this is the first fold of purification to be able to help you to accomplish that. If you are in a job that you don't really like right now, or if you're in between jobs and you'd like to get a new job, you might decide to look in volume 12, chapter 14. This is where the Buddha teaches all of his teachings about how to get to that point where you can have a job that you feel really good about and feel enthusiastic and motivated. So it's in volume 12, chapter 14, and the books are right over there on the bookshelf. You can download them from our website. You can take a look and you'll see not only the first fold, but you'll see the second fold of purification too. And you'll see the words from me that are going to help you with that as well. So this is right livelihood. So just to summarize that, right speech is to not cause harm through your verbal conduct, but also all communication, verbal, text, chat, posts, emails, all of this should be harmless. Then there's right action. No harm through your bodily conduct. All bodily actions should be harmless. So you're not causing harm through your bodily actions. Then your right livelihood is to ensure that you're not causing harm in the way that you sustain your life, the way you make an income, that you would like to do this in a harmless way. Okay, so this is the moral conduct section where you're not causing harm through your actions of speech, your bodily actions, or your livelihood. And remember, this isn't rules or commandments. The Buddha is teaching you the natural laws, and then you can independently verify it for yourself. So do you guys have any questions on the moral conduct section?
But yeah, the questions on the spoken speech. There's what it says true and what is it beneficial. I'm just curious whether there's sometimes there's contradictions. A typical example is in Western culture, the Santa Claus parents it's best wishes for the kids, but it's not true in a way. Is that violate the speech part?
Yes, and I don't advise parents to propagate that belief because it's a lie. And if you're trying to teach your children to be truthful, but yet you're lying with something like Santa Claus, you're not practicing what you're teaching, and this can be very impactful. I remember when I was growing up, I found out at the age of 8 that Santa Claus wasn't true, and I felt so betrayed by my parents that they had lied to me all this time. So I advise parents not to do that, that if they would like to teach about Christmas, that they actually teach what the real thing is. Like my son, he never learned, like I told him about Santa Claus, but it wasn't through trying to propagate the belief within his own mind. But I taught him about Jesus Christ first, before he ever learned anything about Santa Claus. And then eventually, he would come home from school. He's like, Dad, what is the Santa Claus thing that people are talking about at school? And I was like, oh, let me explain that to you. I'll share with you what's going on. So then I taught it to him about why people did this. So it's really unwise to do that kind of thing because it just propagates lies and beliefs, and it's going to cause unwholesome results because of that. So when I was growing up, feeling betrayed by my parents, I was very angry towards them for quite a long time because of that. And that was their unwholesome karma. Yeah. Okay. Yes, sir.
So in the case of having a conflict in the mind between being truthful, saying everything, saying the truth, let's say on the business meeting, and doing harm by saying the truth, right? So one way, as you mentioned the other day, would be not to say everything, right? Not to lie by not saying everything. But let's say it is a business meeting, right? And it kind of is this conflict then, whether is higher priority to be truthful and say, even though it harms emotionally some people, or it's higher priority not to harm people, not to harm people. So it's basically, I'm asking about the priority, and I think it depends on the context, of course, but like how to think about it.
So you just learned that you cause your own anger and sadness and frustration, all these other discontent feelings, right? You just learned that with the Four Noble Truths? Okay. Is it possible for you to cause somebody else emotional harm?
No. They're causing themselves.
Right.
Harm.
They're causing it themselves. So
Okay.
if you're speaking, you would like to always speak the truth, but speaking the truth doesn't mean you say everything you know in all situations. Like if you're in a court of law, it makes sense to say everything you know, right? But in a day-to-day life, speaking the truth doesn't mean you say everything you know. And I gave you that example on Sunday. Like if you were, say, during World War II, maybe a soldier was chasing somebody into your house and they're hiding under your bed and they're like, hey, did Rebecca come in here? If you're like, yeah, she's right there under my bed, you can go kill her. right? Like that would be unwise. What you would like to do is redirect this person. Say things like, oh, are you looking for Rebecca? Why don't we look outside under the bush? Maybe she's hiding under the bush, right? And you kind of redirect them somewhere else. So I don't have to tell them that Rebecca's under my bed in order to speak the truth here. I can just redirect them and ask questions rather than telling them something like that.
Or at least put effort into this direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's many different ways that you can speak the truth without divulging that Rebecca's hiding under your bed.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I would like to say too, sir, since you mentioned about culture, is the teachings of the Buddha, the natural laws of existence, they're cutting through culture. Culture causes difficulties in our life. This is where you guys might have seen a couple of years ago, the Dalai Lama was doing something based on culture, and people from his culture completely understood what he was doing, and it was completely fine for them. But the wider world had a lot of difficulties with that, right? I don't know if you guys know the situation that I'm talking about, but this particular situation occurred where the Dalai Lama was functioning through culture rather than the teachings of the Buddha, right? If you practice the teachings of the Buddha, the natural laws, it'll cut through culture. Because as we travel throughout the world, you can practice these teachings, and it doesn't matter where you are. If you practice these teachings, you'll have a permanent practice. So like when I go to America and I check into a hotel, hello, sir, how are you? I'm checking in. Right? I'm going to lie to them. I'm going to speak very polite and kind and friendly and respectful. I'm going to use the 5 factors of well-spoken speech and all that stuff. And then when I went to Egypt, assalamu alaikum, right? How are you, ma'am? How are you doing, sir? I'd like to check into my hotel, right? You can practice exactly the same way. Whereas if in one situation you practice one way, in another situation you practice another way, in another situation you practice a different way, your mind's going to get very confused and you're going to mess this up sometimes. And you're going to be doing some things in one culture that culture finds to be offensive. And now you're going to experience unwholesome results because of it. So if you get to the point where you're practicing these natural laws, it cuts through all the culture, and you can go to anywhere in the world and you can practice these same exact teachings, and you can just practice in exactly the same way. Your mind doesn't have to figure out, where am I? Who am I talking to? What culture are they from? Where are we? What ethnic group are they from? Oh my goodness, this is so hard to compute in your mind. So if you can get to the point where you're practicing the natural laws, you can practice with everybody and anybody, and you'll have nothing but wholesome results in these situations. So that's an important thing to think about, is that culture is actually going to hinder you from being able to be practicing in such a way that you always have wholesome results in every situation. Okay. You have a question, Galit?
It seems like the world today is such a cutthroat world in a way. It's so competitive, and everywhere you go, and even if one is trying to hold a job or to get a job, to interview for a job, it's so competitive that it almost feels that if they are not sometimes untruthful, yes, then they won't get the job, or they won't be able to be successful. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the standards sometimes. I mean, honestly, I always think of sometimes, marketing, for example. Lots of people do marketing out there, but they always have to try to, what's the word that you used? Can you go back? Flattery. Mm-hmm. There's always flattery in marketing, because you want to try to get the business. And if you don't say enough good words, then you're going to be, or if you don't, then you're not going to be making a sale, then you're going to be in trouble, then you're going to be let go. How does one survive in such a world?
Yeah, so if somebody's doing those kinds of things in order to get a job or to get a paycheck or get money, it's based on craving. And whenever you're making decisions through craving, it's going to produce unwholesome results. You would like to base your decisions and the way you interact in the world on these natural laws. And when you do that, you'll be successful. So you might not get the job you want. If you have this longing, yearning for this particular job, you might not get that job because maybe that company's not researching the credentials of the people that they're hiring, right? And now when you're truthful and this person over here is lying and the company's not researching, they hire this person because they think their credentials are higher, right? But are you really interested in working for a company that's not being thorough in the way that they're hiring people? Because you would like to work for a company that's doing things based on the natural laws, because then you guys can be successful in the work that you do together. Whereas if you just chase after this particular job and that company isn't doing a thorough job of vetting their employees, they might be hiring people who are lying, but now you've got a company full of liars and people who aren't actually having the real credentials that they have. This company is not going to be successful. Where over here, if you're applying and you're being honest and they're vetting people's resumes and they actually hire you, now you're working in an environment where people are actually making wise decisions and you guys will actually be more successful. So you got to get rid of your craving or your clinging to chase after the big shiny job and go towards opportunities in the professional world where people are making wise decisions based on these natural laws, because then you guys can be successful as a group of people. Mm-hmm.
But when it's in situations where there is not necessarily craving of the job, of one is in a specific job, because I understand, and I did ask this before, that there's always a choice. You can leave the job. You don't want to be working for these people. There's no doubt. Mm-hmm. But in many situations, especially like in the U.S., people are working in specific jobs because of the health insurance. So they're kind of tied to their job because they need a specific health insurance for themselves or for their family. And so then they feel stuck in a way. If they don't comply with the terms, then they'll be let go and they'll have to look for something else. And sometimes people are in situations where they can't rock the boat. So what?
Yeah. Once again, that's craving and clinging. I'm craving and clinging to this country of the USA. I'm craving and clinging to be in this environment. I'm craving and clinging to my families, my house, the money. I'm clinging to my insurance and holding on to that. It's just a whole mountain of craving and clinging where someone can say, you know what? I'm not interested in this. I'm going to let all this go and I'm going to go live in Mexico, right? Or I'm going to go live in Thailand. And I'm going to unplug from all of this craving and clinging. Somebody could do that, but because they're not, and they feel like they're stuck, they're not actually stuck. They just have craving and clinging. If they got rid of their craving and clinging, they could see like, hey, I can go live in Europe, or I can go live over here or live over there. I don't have to stay stuck. But people choose to do that because of their craving and clinging. Do you see that? How the mind's holding on to these things? Because you've chosen something different. You chose to leave out of America, and you were comfortable doing that. But there's a lot of people there and other places too that they feel stuck, but they're really not. The only reason why they're stuck is because they have craving and clinging.
So there could never be a situation where somebody is truly stuck. They're able to break away.
Yeah, like you could rebuild your life, right? Like say somebody is in a job that they're not having much success, or they're doing all this flattering just to be able to be successful. Maybe they're holding on to that big salary and they don't want to let that go. They don't want to let that money go. They could reorganize their life, bring their expenses down, and now go over here and work at this other job where they're making wiser decisions about these natural laws. And now they've built a really stable life for themselves where they don't have to live this fake life where they're just flattering just to hold on to this money and this insurance and all these other things. an individual has to break through all of that and realize that that's not going to lead to permanent happiness and permanent peace and permanent joy. That flattery, that lying, that coercion and corruption, that's not going to lead to any kind of peacefulness and joy. And sometimes you need to do something radical like you did, which is just get rid of everything and just come to Thailand. Sometimes people do it that way. It doesn't work for everybody, but some people need to do that. But you can even do that within your own country. You don't have to necessarily leave a country to do that kind of thing. I did that. I was in IT for 7 or 8 years, making all kinds of big money. And I did something radical, and I just, left from that and went and opened up my own business. And I did that gradually. But I did something very radical living inside of America. So we can do these kinds of things. We don't have to feel stuck, but with craving and clinging, somebody will feel stuck. And then, of course, there are certain obstacles, right? Like people who are in like generational poverty and things like this, those are obstacles that they need to overcome, but we can overcome those. We're not truly stuck. We can just cultivate wisdom and make different decisions, and we will experience different results. And that takes time. It's not going to be quick. But see, with craving, the mind wants it right now. Wants it really quick, really fast. But if you understand that if we're living our life in an unwise way, to switch over here to something that's wiser, it's going to be a gradual process. And that's part of the learning and the growing. Okay. All right. So now let's move into the mental discipline section, because this is what's going to help you to practice the moral conduct. You wouldn't be able to practice the moral conduct without the mental discipline. So this is where you're going to really see the teachings of the Buddha come alive with right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So, keeps doing that. Right effort. This is the words of the Buddha. I'm going to read it to you, and then I'm going to teach it to you. The Buddha says, "In what, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort." So he's talking about 4 things here, 4 efforts. And I'm going to help you to understand what those are with examples. He's talking about preventing unwholesome mental states that have not arisen from arising in the mind, applying the effort to do that. So there are certain unwholesome things that are not currently in your mind right now, and you would like to apply the effort to prevent those from ever coming into your mind. One example of that is killing another human being. That's probably like the farthest thing from your mind right now. You're not even thinking about that. And the Buddha is saying prevent that from ever coming into your mind, because it's going to produce unwholesome results. But there's other things too. This is just an example, right? There's certain unwholesome things that are not currently in your mind. You're going to need to apply the effort to prevent those from ever coming into the mind. Abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind. There's certain unwholesome things that are currently in your mind, and that's going to be unique to you. But here's some examples that someone might experience. If someone's in an existing relationship and they have a craving for sex outside of that relationship, they're going to need to see that as unwholesome and unwise, and they're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate that out of the mind, because it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. So you're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate that out of the mind. Or anger, frustration, irritation, you're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate that out of the mind if you're noticing that arising. Then there's produce unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind. There are certain wholesome mental states that you're going to need to have in your mind that are not currently there. and you're going to need to apply the effort to bring those into your mind. Something like generosity is a good example of this. Generosity is the giving and sharing of more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. This is going to help you to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, because it's training your mind to let go. An enlightened being isn't selfish. They're not holding on to things very tightly. They're training their mind to let go, that things don't have to be self-satisfying all the time. So if you know that you're not a generous person and you find it hard to share, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring this generosity into your mind. Okay, so this is bringing in a wholesome quality that is not currently there. Or you might notice that you are lacking compassion. What compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. The opposite of this would be indifference. Like if you see somebody having misfortune and you're like, I don't care. It's not me. It's not my family members. Who cares? Right? If you have that thought, that's the opposite of compassion. And you're going to need to arise this compassion in the mind. So you're going to need to apply the effort to bring this wholesome quality into your mind. Whether you take action in a certain situation is a whole nother topic, right? We're just talking about the mental quality of compassion, where you have concern for the misfortune of others. And you're going to need to potentially bring that into your mind and cultivate that if it's not currently in your mind. And this is just one example. Then the fourth one here is maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not allowing them to fade away, and work to increase their growth in the mind. So there's certain wholesome qualities that are currently in your mind. And what the Buddha is saying is you're going to need to support those, encourage those. Don't allow them to fade away. Apply the effort to bring them to full perfection and full development. So I'll give you some examples of that. Something like loving kindness. Loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. The opposite of this is inner hate, right? Or anger, or the frustration, those kinds of things, right? So if you have loving kindness, you have a genuine interest for all beings to be well. And in some cases, you probably have this. You probably have loving kindness where you would like to see other beings be well. But it hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection, because in some situations you're angry, you're frustrated, you maybe have ill will towards another person. You're going to need to apply the effort to arise this loving kindness in your mind. Support it, encourage it, don't allow it to fade away. Bring it to full growth and full perfection. And then there's something called sympathetic joy. This is joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. The opposite of this would be envy or jealousy. Okay, so you might have sympathetic joy in your mind. Somebody says, hey, I'm going to go to Thailand next year. And you're like, it's going to be so fun. I was there. You have a great time. Enjoy yourself. You have sympathetic joy in that situation. You have joy for other success, even if you didn't contribute to it. But now let's just say you're at work. Someone applies for a promotion. You apply for a promotion. They get the job instead of you. And now they come around to your desk and they're like, hey, I got that job. Maybe you feel envious or jealous, right? Maybe you're angry because your sympathetic joy hasn't been brought to full growth and full development. So you're going to need to support that, encourage it. Don't allow it to fade because it's in the mind. It just hasn't been brought to full growth and full development. So this is right effort, where you're preventing certain unwholesome qualities from coming into the mind, where the certain unwholesome qualities that are in the mind, you're applying the effort to get rid of those. The wholesome qualities that are not currently in your mind, you're applying the effort to bring those into your mind. And the wholesome qualities that are currently in your mind, you're applying the effort to support them and encourage them and bring them to full growth and full perfection. So this is called right effort. Right effort wouldn't be able to be practiced without right mindfulness. So right mindfulness is what's going to allow you to practice right effort. What right mindfulness is the four foundations of mindfulness, and then more specifically, awareness of mind. So let me share what the words of the Buddha here are. He says, in what, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk resides, reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. This is called right mindfulness. So here he's talking about 4 things. But before we talk about those, in general, what he's talking about with right mindfulness is having awareness of mind. You're going to need to have awareness of your thoughts, your ideas, your feelings, these different things. This is what's going to help you to purify your mind and apply right effort. If you weren't aware of the unwholesome qualities and the wholesome qualities, you wouldn't be able to actually apply right effort. So you're going to need to have this awareness of the mind. And you may or may not have that right now, right? Because you need to have awareness of what's going through your mind. Now, this word mindfulness is used a lot in common language nowadays. Somebody might say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to the table? And in this situation, they're not using it in the way that the Buddha taught. So you're going to need to understand this word in the way that the Buddha taught it. If you use it in the same way that other people are using it, your mind's not going to fully understand what the Buddha is teaching here. So while other people might be using it in this way, it would be important for you to understand how to use it and what it actually means. Because when someone says, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to the table? What they're really saying is, can you carefully carry this glass of water to the table? That's what they're saying, right? But that's not what mindfulness means. Mindfulness means awareness of the mind, okay? And you might hang out there for a few months, just building this general awareness of the mind. In the next step, it's going to teach you how to do that, right? But after you're developing this awareness of mind and you're understanding and you're noticing the thoughts and the ideas and the things going through your mind, then ultimately you would like to build what's called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is very key to getting to enlightenment. What the 4 foundations of mindfulness are, this is like a early warning system. This is like alerting you to the life cycle of discontentedness, that when discontentedness is arising in the mind, there's first going to be bodily sensations. So if you've ever remember when before you got angry, you might have had like tingling in the body, you might have had tightening in the chest, you might have had tightening in the throat, you might have had heat in the face, you might have had pressure in the skull. This is an early warning system alerting you, hey, you're about to get angry, you're about to get frustrated, you're about to get annoyed, right? This is the bodily sensations. And all the discontent feelings, whether they're pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, they have these bodily sensations. And you may or may not even be aware of them right now, but this is what you need to build awareness of, because it's an early warning system alerting you that the mind is about to get discontent. And what you would like to do in that situation when the mind's about to get discontent and you're noticing those bodily sensations is you would like to cut it off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go. That's what these bodily sensations are. It's an early warning system alerting you you're about to get frustrated or angry or some other discontent feeling. So it's kind of like, I'm about to get angry. I'm about to get angry. You're noticing the tingling. You're noticing the tightening of the chest. The mind's like, I'm about to get frustrated. I'm about to get angry. And you say, nope, not going to let you do that. You cut it off and let it go. This trains your mind to get rid of its cravings, desires, attachments, so that it's no longer forming its inner feelings based on some condition. You're essentially rewiring the mind. Because if you miss it as a bodily sensation, it's going to become a feeling. And now when it becomes a conditioned feeling, you've got to deal with it. You've got anger in your mind. It's kind of like you're on a boat and you're going from like the UK to Canada, and now you're in the middle of the ocean and this water comes flooding into your boat. You've got a real problem to deal with now, or you're going to sink. So if you can prevent the water from ever coming into the boat, you can sail your way from the UK to Canada with no issues, right? So you'd like to prevent these conditioned feelings from coming into the mind. You're not suppressing your feelings. When I describe this, sometimes people think it's suppressing their feelings. You're not suppressing them. You're actually cutting them off and letting them go before they become a feeling. Right? So you're cutting it off as a bodily sensation before it's even become a feeling. So you cut it off and cut it off and cut it off and cut it off. And over time, your mind eventually will let it go entirely. Because if you don't cut it off as a bodily sensation, it's going to become a feeling. And then when it becomes a feeling, it's going to affect the condition of your mind. Have you ever been angry or frustrated for a few hours or a few days or like a week or two? Of course you have, right? You've been grumpy and irritable. This is because you didn't understand this, right? There was a bodily sensation, there was a feeling, then your mind was holding on to that for a few hours, a few days, a week or two, you were grumpy or irritable. And now it forms what's called a mental object. A mental object is a deeply rooted container in the mind. In this example, it's ill will. When we were all born, we didn't have ill will. Ill will is anger and hatred. We didn't have that when we were born. When we went into the nursery at the hospital, we didn't hate other babies, right? We didn't have that when we went into the nursery at the hospital. But what happened is that we had cravings, desires, attachments. We wanted things to be a certain way. When mommy and daddy gave us chocolate and ice cream, we were so happy and so excited. And then when they didn't give us chocolate and ice cream, we got angry and frustrated because we were craving that permanence. And now we had the bodily sensations, we had the feelings, it affected the condition of our mind for multiple minutes or hours, and then we formed this deeply rooted container in the mind called ill will. Like right now, you guys are all just sitting here listening to me. You don't have any anger in your mind. But if somebody triggers one of your cravings, if you get some kind of craving triggered, your ill will is going to arise because you've got that deeply rooted container in there. You can be angry and bitter and hostile. Right now, you're not experiencing that because it's deeply rooted in the mind. But it can arise if something gets triggered in your mind, right? So the Buddha is teaching you to put this blockade at the bodily sensations and cut down and cut off these feelings that are occurring, these conditioned feelings, so that now you can clean up these mental objects. The mental objects are the fetters. Those 10 fetters that are in the mind, that's what you're purifying the mind of. You're getting rid of those mental objects and cleaning up your mind so that that ill will doesn't arise anymore because it's completely gone. But as long as you keep feeding these mental objects, you can't clean them up. So you need to put on this blockade where your mind is saying, hey, I'm about to get angry. I'm about to get angry. I'm about to get angry. That's your early warning system, those bodily sensations. And you like to cut it off and let it go. So you can maybe understand this intellectually, what I'm saying right now, but your mind's not quite capable of doing this 100% in every situation right now because you haven't had enough training. You're going to need to train the mind in this way, right? So you're going to need to build this awareness of mind, and then you're going to need to gradually build the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you're aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. And it's the next step that's going to help you with right mindfulness, because right effort couldn't be practiced without right mindfulness. But you can't practice right mindfulness without this next step of right concentration. This is what's going to help you to be able to develop your mindfulness. You need to gradually train your mind with right concentration. I'm not going to read the words of the Buddha here because what he's describing is the jhanas, those 4 preliminary phases that the mind experiences before it gets to the first stage of enlightenment. So in other places of his teachings, he explains to you how to practice right concentration. But here in the Eightfold Path, he's explaining to you the results. That if you put together the entire Eightfold Path, this is what you're going to start experiencing, is these jhanas. These are enhanced qualities of mind that you start experiencing. I'll just give you an example of one of them. So by the time you get to the second jhana, you will experience what's called unification of the mind, or oneness of mind. Prior to that, you have a conscious mind and you have a subconscious mind. And your conscious mind is polluted, but your subconscious mind is even more polluted. If you have ever been around somebody or a group of people and you just blurted something out and you were like, why did I say that? I don't think that way. Right? You have awareness of your conscious mind, but you don't have awareness of your subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is like very dirty, and it will send things up into your conscious mind, and you will just blurt them out without even thinking about it. And you'll be like, why did I say that? I don't think that way. That was really racist. Why did I say that? Like, you don't really think that way, but your subconscious mind has that, right? So by the time you get to the second jhana, you've trained your mind so well that you now have what's called unification of the mind, or oneness of mind. You can see the entire mind. There's no longer a conscious and subconscious mind. It's just one mind, right? So this comes through the results of practicing the Eightfold Path deeply. So there's other qualities here, and I teach this at different times. But in a foundational class like this, you're not going to be experiencing these tomorrow or next week, so it doesn't make sense for me to teach these here. But in other courses and retreats, I teach you guys what these are, because you're going to need to know that your mind is experiencing these things. Because once you start experiencing the jhanas, your practice kind of pivots, because you've put together the Eightfold Path really well. These jhanas are like the light bulb is flickering, and it's giving you glimpses of some of the qualities of enlightenment, and it's helping you to see, it's giving you an indicator that you've put together the Eightfold Path really well. So I'm not going to read this to you, but instead I'm going to focus on what are the practices that are going to help you develop right concentration. And this is from other parts of the teachings of the Buddha. There's two things that you need to do in order to practice right concentration. This is that develop a daily meditation practice and to practice singleness of mind in daily life. So this is why we're working on meditation in this particular course, because it's breathing mindfulness meditation that's going to help you to develop concentration and your mindfulness. So when we're focused on the breath and the mind moves off the breath and you're cutting that off and letting it go, that's training your mind to let go, let go, let go. So if 10, 20, 30 times during your meditation you have to let go, this is really good for your mind, because with craving, desire, attachment, your mind's holding on. It doesn't want to let go. So the goal of this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. The goal is to train your mind to let go. So during the breathing mindfulness meditation, when you're focused on the breath, you're developing your concentration. And then when the mind moves off the breath, that's your mindfulness. You're aware, the mind just moved off the breath, right? And now you train your mind to let that go. That's training your mind to eliminate the craving, desire, attachment. Now you bring your mind back to the breath. So if you're exercising the mind this way, like you're going to the gym, over time, you're developing your concentration and your mindfulness and the ability to easily let go. Because if you think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you broke up with, you couldn't let go. For 2 weeks or 2 months or however long it was, you were angry, you were frustrated because your mind was holding on. But at some point, you let go. You said, you know what? If she wants to be with someone else, so be it. Or if he wants to move to another part of the world, so be it. And you let go. And that's where your peace came in. So that's what this meditation is doing for you, is it's building your awareness of mind, your mindfulness. It's building your concentration so that then you can train your mind to let go, let go, let go. And you don't hold on to things very tight. Okay, so you'd like to gradually build up your practice to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. And this can take you sometimes 6 months, a year, even 2 years. We're going to talk about this afternoon after lunch. We're going to go into this in a lot more detail, and I'm going to explain to you all the ins and outs of meditation, because you're going to need this in order to build your right concentration and your right mindfulness and to be able to apply right effort. Then there's another part. There's practicing singleness of mind in daily life. This is where you just do one thing at a time. You might have been taught multitasking. Your mind actually can't multitask. What you're really doing is you're doing something for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 6 seconds, and then you're rapidly cycling to something else. And you're doing that for 3 seconds, 8 seconds, 10 seconds, and then you're rapidly cycling to something else. Your mind's just bouncing around like this, from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. It's kind of like a racehorse. If you ever have been to a racetrack and you see the racehorses racing around, when they go to the barn, they can't calm down, right? Because they're just so used to running around this racetrack. So if all throughout your day, your mind is bouncing around like this, when you get home from work, you probably find it hard to just relax. And you might have stress or anxiety in your mind because the mind's bouncing around like this. You can only actually do one thing at a time, but the mind thinks, because of its lack of wisdom, that it can do more than one thing. Multitasking wasn't a thing until about the 1960s when computers came out. Computers can multitask because it's a computer, it's a device, it's got multiple processors, right? But when they came out, human beings were like, why don't we learn how to multitask just like a computer? But a mind can't actually do this. So your mind's rapidly cycling from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. So the way that you would like to do this is that if you're washing the dishes and your mind wanders, you would like to cut that off and let it go and bring your mind back to the washing of the dishes. Whereas if you're there daydreaming about something else, your mind's wandering and you're not focused with singleness of mind. Or say you're in a business meeting and now you're in a business meeting and you're thinking about going to Thailand. And you're like, man, I just can't wait to get out of this place and go to Thailand. Like your mind's wandering. You're not applying yourself in that business meeting and handling the work that you need to do. So you would like to notice that with your mindfulness, that your mind is wandering, and now practice singleness of mind where you cut that off and bring it back and focus on the business meeting. And when you do this enough times, your mind won't wander like this anymore. Your mind will be focused and concentrated and have clarity. It's kind of like if you had a piece of wood and you had a steel rod and you grinded this back and forth. At the beginning, it's going to bounce around a lot because there's not a groove there yet. But if you grind that long enough, eventually you're going to get a groove here. And now if it pops out, you're going to know it. And now you're going to be able to bring it right back. But eventually, if you grind this steel rod long enough, you're going to get a deeper and deeper groove, and it will never pop out. That's the way the mind works. That if you practice this singleness of mind in washing dishes, in your business meeting, when you're driving, when you're here, you're listening to someone talk, if you practice singleness of mind more and more, your mind will just stay focused all the time because you've got a deeper and deeper groove here. So this is what you would like to do, is build up your meditation practice and practice singleness of mind in your day-to-day life. Okay? I'm going to go back for a second with right mindfulness because there's something that I usually teach here that's going to be really helpful for you. As I mentioned to you, when you're having right mindfulness, that you have awareness of mind, and when the bodily sensations are coming, you cut that off and let it go. Don't allow the mind to experience that conditioned feeling, right? So let me explain to you how this might work in day-to-day life. Say you're sitting on the sofa and you're watching TV. Maybe you're watching the news. And as you're watching the news, you see something on the news and you're noticing the frustration that the bodily sensations are starting to come. And instead of just sitting there dwelling in that, what you would like to do is apply right effort. Cut that off, right? So turn off the news and get up and go for a walk, right? That's how you apply this. This is the way it looks in day-to-day life. I explained to you the technical aspect of it, of cutting it off and letting it go. But the way it looks in daily life is that you might need to redirect the mind. So if you're sitting there on the sofa and you're watching the news and you're noticing the bodily sensations of frustration starting to arise, just get up and go get a glass of water. Go to the bathroom, go outside for a walk, go for a bike ride, go do something else. Or if you're on the phone with mom and you're starting to notice the frustration come up, hey mom, I need to get going. We'll talk another time. Love you so much. Bye-bye. Right? And you just say goodbye and you go do something else. Redirect the mind to go do something else. This is how this looks in day-to-day life. Okay? So the way that right concentration looks in day-to-day life is practicing meditation and practicing singleness of mind. Whenever you notice the mind's wandering, you cut that off and let it go. So like right now, if you're thinking about lunch, like, oh my goodness, like I'm going to get me some cow soy that's going to be so delicious and I can't wait to get that mango and sticky rice in my mouth. Nope, cut that off. Focus right here, right? And now you focus on this, right? That's what you would like to do. And now more and more, your mind will just stay focused all the time. Okay, so now a little bit of a recap before I open up to questions is right effort is taking the initiative to eliminate unwholesome aspects of the mind and cultivate wholesome qualities in the mind. Right mindfulness is awareness of mind. That's where you would like to start out, just having general awareness of the mind, but more specifically, the four foundations of mindfulness, where you have awareness of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. Okay? Then there's right concentration, where you're practicing meditation and you're developing singleness of mind, just doing one thing at a time until you start experiencing the jhanas. Once you start experiencing the jhanas, that's where you're still going to be practicing these, but now you're going to start pivoting and you're going to start focusing on the 10 fetters. And these meditation and singleness of mind is the right concentration. And there's breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation, which we're going to talk about these this afternoon. So do you guys have any questions on the Eightfold Path? Anything you'd like to ask? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. It's just sometimes, like for example, at my work, one person really annoys me. I get really angry because she's like horrible. And if I have a meeting with her, I can't just feel I start getting annoyed and say bye and leave. I have to talk to her. So what do you do? Because you can't always just walk away. Sometimes you have to deal with people that make you angry. So how do you deal with that?
Okay, is it this other person who's annoying you?
It's something in me.
Okay.
But I don't know how to change it. So
okay. So what you would like to do, I just was making sure that was on board first. Okay, what you would like to do is practice this entire path, right? And it's going to be challenging, but if I was having this issue and I knew I was going to go see somebody that I tend to get frustrated and agitated with, what I would do is I would do some meditation before that meeting, before I go talk to her. I do some breathing mindfulness meditation, also loving kindness meditation, because that's what's going to knock down the anger, the frustration, the agitation. And now when you go into the meeting, you're starting at a very good point. And then you would like to practice all of these things. Right speech, right action, right livelihood. And now let's just say 10 minutes into the meeting, something's happening and I'm noticing that frustration starting to arise. I would say, excuse me, Barbara, I need to go use the restroom. This is a great way to step away. I need to go use the restroom. I'll be back. And now you go away to the restroom, even if it's just to go wash your hands. That's it. Right? Because people aren't going to say, no, stay here. You got to talk to me. That's like a really good exit, is to say that you need to go use the restroom. And now you go step away. You take your time walking to the bathroom. You're thinking through like, cut this off, cut this off, cut this off, cut this off. And now you just go to the bathroom. You take your 5 minutes or 10 minutes or so, and then you come back with a more calm mind. And now you start over. Right? This is the way you do it. So you can do some things proactively before the meeting to help you. And then at any point during the conversation, you can just excuse yourself to the bathroom, regain your composure without them even realizing that you're experiencing some frustration. Go regain your composure and then come back and start having the conversation again. All right.
Questions?
Oh, yes, sir.
Can you remind me, what is an unwholesome mental state?
Unwholesome mental states are things like craving is an unwholesome mental state, anger, like frustration, agitation, annoyance. This ignorance is an unwholesome mental state. You're going to learn about this tomorrow when we talk about the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots.
Okay.
These are qualities that are going to produce unwholesome results in your life.
Okay, understand.
So I remember also a talk you gave where you say that if we are afraid of something or if something is making us feel uncomfortable, it's like one of the techniques to get rid of this discontentment. It is to put yourself in the situation that makes you feel uncomfortable, or to imagine it. So in my case, I get a lot of discontentment when I see people, I don't know, like blind people begging for money, or little kids, or like people with a really tough life situation. And I know it's useful to feel this way. I'm not helping anybody. I'm just making myself feel bad. So I don't know, like when I see somebody, I don't know, without legs, dragging himself, asking for money or things like that, should I just turn my head away? Because that is not even going to make me feel better. I mean, I don't even need to see it. I know there's a bunch of people existing, like in really, really tough situations. So that doesn't make me feel nice.
So this is a lack of compassion in the mind. This is one of those wholesome qualities that is not there. So you're going to need to apply right effort to bring in that compassion, the concern for the misfortune of others. Because being indifferent, where you could care less about what's going on here, you're getting angry because you see these kinds of things, you're not interested in living there. But you're also not interested in being over here where you worry about every little person that is having difficulties or struggles in the world either. You'd like to come to the middle where you can just have concern for their misfortune. And that's going to come through training of this. So where you see with your mindfulness that you're lacking compassion in that situation, you would like to apply right effort to bring that compassion into your mind. And that's what's going to help you over time to cultivate it. It's not going to be just one day or one situation, but multiple situations is what's going to help you to do that.
So I don't understand. What is the right view in here?
What is the right view?
The right view, yeah.
So what you described in your situation, that's you not having compassion. The mind's is lacking compassion. So the solution to that is to notice that with your mindfulness that you're lacking compassion, and then apply right effort to bring that compassion into the mind where you have concern for the misfortune of other beings.
I think maybe I didn't explain myself well. I do care. I feel pretty bad seeing people like that. That's the thing. I don't want to feel like that because I know I'm not helping anybody by feeling this way. So why it's a lack of compassion?
Compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others.
I do get this concern.
Okay, so maybe there's a craving there that you want people to function a certain way, right? Where you're seeing, you said somebody who doesn't have any legs and they're asking for money, you said you get angry with that situation. There's some craving there that's causing that.
I don't get angry.
Am I misunderstanding?
Yes.
Okay, why don't we talk afterwards? This way we don't have to use the mics and get so loud and everything. Let people go to lunch and eat, and then we can talk since it's a more personal thing. Okay. All right. So it's 12:30. Would you guys be okay with an hour lunch today? Anybody attached to an hour and a half? Anybody going to get angry when we make a change? Yeah? You're going to get angry? Okay. So you'll have to work on that. Okay. So let's get back at 1:30 so that we can pick up with the meditation from there. Enjoy your lunch, and I'll see you guys in an hour. Okay?